comment for agenda items for those attending this meeting via teleconference or video conference. Do we have any attendees? I'm sorry.
There's one call-in user, otherwise it's all staff.
Mhm.
We have one.
One public member.
Sure.
At least-
Do I need to read this for the
I think
Water
so.
Authority? Okay, chair to read aloud. If at any point anyone would like to ask a question or make a comment and have joined this meeting with their computer, they can click on the raised hand button located at the bottom of the screen. We will be alerted that they would like to speak. When called upon, please unmute the microphone and ask the question or make the comments in no more than 3 minutes. Those who have joined by dialing a number on their telephone need to press *6 to unmute themselves and *9 to alert us that they would like to speak. A slight pause will also be offered at the conclusion of each agenda item discussion to allow public members an opportunity to make a comment or ask questions. Oral and written communications. Do we have any oral or written communications?
We did not receive any written communications.
We don't have any speaker slips.
And no speaker.
Any raised hands? Ready? Nope. Okay. So we're good to go on to 15.
Okay. Employee recognitions.
Well, today we have two excellent employees
Wow.
in a unique circumstance because both the people are being recognized for their tenure, but also in an amazing coincidence, or maybe it's not coincidental, both are being recognized for having received all 5 excellent scores.
Oh,
Right?
wow.
We'll start with
Awesome. Woohoo.
Brian Rose, I'll be right with the picture. Brian Rose has been here for 20 years now. Brian served in a lot of things, but he's a crew leader working in our operations team. Brian, when I need to figure out something, I call Brian and he's got a lot of ideas where everything is. So if you want to know, he's been around. And one of the things I really appreciate about Brian is that he's always thinking about how to do things better. And over the 9 years I've been here, sometimes he says, "Hey, why aren't we doing this?" Like, yeah, let's do that. And we do that and it works out well. But since 2017, he's received 12 nominations for coins, obviously
Oh my
a
gosh.
lot of
Wow.
honorable mentions. And so he's well respected by his peers. As a side note, pretty much every SpaceX or now some other rocket companies, I'm texting Brian because he's also an aficionado of space flight and the new launch vehicles that are going up. And so 20 years service and
Wow.
all 5 coins all in one.
Woohoo.
Yeah, there we go. I gotta shake hands and then do this.
Great job. Thank you.
All right. Kenny Diaz has been here since 2008, so 15 years also. Won all 5 coins. When I got here, Kenny was working up in the front office and customer service and handling the meters and jack of all trades doing everything. But Kenny's one of our outstanding technicians at dealing with the customers in the field and the metering side. He's got 8 total, so he's Brian took 12 to get to all 5 and 8. Kenny did it in just 8.
Yeah. 15.
but,
Yeah.
But a lot of these were due to some really positive feedback from ratepayers. A lot of these come from not internal staff. When customer has a great experience in the field, quite often not as often as we get other sorts of
There's no calls.
But every now and then somebody calls and says, "Hey, this guy really helped me out," and Kenny gets a lot of those. So congratulations to Kenny.
Great job. Thank
Cool.
you.
Crazy how those two worked out like sick.
Yeah.
Item number 16, approval of the minutes. Do I have a discussion or motion relative to the minutes from the February 28th meeting?
I move we approve the minutes.
A second. Moved by Director Moss, seconded by Director Gasca. We can do a voice
Voice
vote,
votes,
right?
you're all here.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion passes. Board of Directors comments and reports, President's report. May 22nd, May 2nd and 3rd. I had the opportunity to do the State Water Project.
March.
March.
Yeah,
What did I say?
May.
May.
Wow.
I'm doing it this month.
Where's that pillow when you need it?
Let's get 'em in a
May,
boat.
March 2nd and 3rd. I had the opportunity to do the State Water Project tour. We toured Orville Dam, the Bay Delta region, we had an overview presentation on the Sykes Reservoir,
Sites Road, yeah.
which I found very fascinating and interesting since this project started in 2012. Is forecast to be in production by 2032
Oh, my God.
and represents one of the first funded projects for, is it Prop 16? Water storage.
One of the
allocation.
propositions they've had.
One of the
They did it-
propositions in 2016.
Oh, my God.
They are hoping to have their water allocation approved, their allotment approved next year. And while it's interesting, it probably doesn't affect us tremendously other than as a state of California ratepayer and taxpayer, you're paying for it. It's an interesting concept in which what they've basically done is identified a area which they can divert excess flows out of the State Water Project canal, All America. Is it not All America?
No, it's up there. It's out of the Sacramento River, I think,
No, it's actually out of the canal.
out of the State Water Project stuff.
Yeah, out of the State Water Project. It'd be excess flows would be banked into this reservoir for diversion back into the water project in drought times.
Did they talk about the diversion on the fields, flooding, where the farmers are flooding the fields to replenish groundwater?
No, they didn't talk about that specifically.
Okay.
In terms of the state water, the water project areas that we covered were the Bay Delta region and the seriousness
This
of
is in
that.
area.
It's quite impressive when you're driving along in a bus and you look out the left side of the bus and the water level is about 10 feet below your window. And you look out the right side of the bus and the land is about 35 feet below you. And they had a breach in the last rainstorm. It was actually up in the northern portion of the Delta. What happens is that area is primarily a peat area. And when you expose peat to air, it basically carbonizes and stinks. So over the last 100 years, through management or mismanagement, they've had to build levees to protect the farming areas, and it's continuing to sink. It gets to a point where the water will percolate under the levee and pop up into the island, if you will. And that's what happened up in the latest breach that they had.
Inverse islands where they're below the
Inverse
water
islands.
level.
The islands are below water level.
Kind of
Um,
like Amsterdam.
Yeah, they accept a lot worse than that. There's a lot of effort going on to both protect wildlife and enhance the Bay Delta region. They've lost about 95%, I think it was, of all the native habitat in the Bay Delta area through our man's manipulation of the environment. And this impacts the smelt. And I'd actually seen this in an aqua presentation. The biggest problem they have with the salmon runs right now is that there's so little food value, food resources in the Bay Delta region that by the time the fish is ready to migrate out into the ocean, they're about 4 inches long. Under normal circumstances, they'd be about 6 to 8 inches long.
Mm.
That little guy can't outswim the striped bass that were introduced by man for fishing enjoyment. And so the bass actually know, in fact, the one of the presentations we had, we went to an area where they reintroduce hatchery fish. And it's all on one island. They now have 4 different locations that they do it because it's like the bass know when these fish are going to be introduced, and they just congregate around the outlet where they fish are, the fingerlings are poured in. So now they move where they're dumping to try to give the poor guys a chance to get out. Anyway, fascinating tour. I'd recommend it to anybody to take the time and do it. One of the other interesting sidebars that was never discussed, but I saw on a map at Oroville Dam, is about 80% of the Oroville water drainage area has burned in the last 5 years, since 2018. And that creates major problems in runoff when we have a potential runoff like we have this year.
Yeah, they've been dumping water.
they've
on
been
Oroville like
dumping-
crazy.
And, snowpack at 200% or whatever, and more coming this week. So
Feet worse.
anyway, that's my president's report. I'd encourage anybody to have that has an opportunity to take that to do so.
Thank you. I'm going next month.
I haven't done the Colorado River one, but I'm sure there's probably
good one.
interesting information there as well. San Diego County Water Authority.
All right, well, since our last meeting, we've had 2 meetings of the Water Authority. The February meeting was a preamble to what happened in March, but just to tie into what President Hamilton was saying, during this month's meeting, the Water Authority was bemoaning the potential investments in conveyance structures that would bring the water from Oroville through the Delta in a different way than through those 100-year-old levees, which is dicey to say the least. And for some reason, the Water Authority has it that the Colorado River rights are so secure that we don't need water from the north. But as we're seeing right here, and we were just talking about before the meeting, the state water project is going to be, it's already got announced, it's at 75% deliveries. It'll probably go to 100% deliveries.
Yeah.
They're filling Diamond Valley Reservoir with state project water, right? They're going to fill it by the end of the year. So it'll be completely topped off. And this happened 5-6 years ago with the same sort of thing. But if we didn't have good conveyance through there, none of that water gets here. If those levees fail, we don't get that water. And so I think that it's bad in the water business, but all your eggs in one basket to say that, oh, we don't need this supply here. And so for some reason, they're against the projects up in the Delta. But I think obviously, as long as we can get state and federal money to pay for these things, as opposed to our ratepayers, it's important to have it done. And I believe that's the way it's going to go. Some of these bond issuances the state has done, they sit on these billions of dollars and never spend it. Hopefully, it sounds like they're going to start spending some of it. But as I've always say, the state's much better at taking in money than sending it back out. And so that was on one of the things that happened at the Water Authority. There was a long discussion during the metropolitan discussion about all the challenges that Met's going to be facing. And there was all this discussion about how Met is this and Met is that, and how Met treats the Water Authority, and how they're making investments in stuff that we shouldn't have to pay for. And my comment was like, I've just been listening to you for 10 minutes. And if you just took the word Met out and put SDCWA in there, it would make sense to a lot of us. And all around the room, people are nodding their heads and actually I talked to the board chair and later he goes, you were exactly right. That's exactly what's going on here. And my comments there were, we can't sit here and point at Met and say they're doing bad and we're going to do this thing. We need to make sure that as a region, we're all working on the same sheet of music. Because a good example is a little over 20 years ago, the Water Authority decided that we needed more local treatment and started design on the Twin Oaks Valley treatment plant. And it was going to be a 50 million gallon a day plant. And it had made sense then because at the time we were running at capacity on our treated water pipelines and we needed to move some water on the raw water side. Well, at the same time, Met was expanding the Skinner plant up to 600 million gallons a day. Or was it, I forget, Robert, do you remember what the expansion was? They expanded by a couple 100 million gallons a day because demands were going up, Temecula was growing, all that sort of stuff. Water Authority decides to expand Twin Oaks even more to 100 million gallons a day. Well, now we find ourselves if there was better coordination between those two agencies, one or both could have avoided capital investments that are now mothballed. I mean, the Twin Oaks plant is running at 20-25% capacity when it's running at all. When was the last time that sucker was on at Twin Oaks, Robert? It's been a while. And so now we're find ourselves, because of a lack of coordination and a lack of partnering and lack of working together with our neighboring agencies, that we are stuck with these red herrings that are costing all the ratepayers dearly. So my comments on that one were aligned toward, rather than in sitting here and bemoaning what Met's doing, let's roll our sleeves and work with Met so that we avoid these sorts of things. And I challenged the board chair, because Met had a visioning session that everyone was saying was great. They got together, they're looking, where is the future of Met? What is the future of Met? And there was very candid and open discussions, and everybody got, and the water authority's happy now because they've got some leadership positions. They've got people on the officers group. They've got some chairs of some committees, and they're like, yeah, we're going to do this stuff. And I challenged Chair Katz to say, we should do the same thing here, so that we can all share, at least develop a common vision of what is the water authority going to be in 20 years? What do we think our sales going to be? What happens if our sales go down? What happens if our sales go up? And have a good plan, as opposed to using past as prologue. We need to move forward. And I talked to him at the lunchroom, and he said he was committed to doing it, and I hope he does. But as you may imagine, the one of the biggest points of discussion was the large rate increase the water authority proposed. That was interestingly, and this is not something I don't think I've ever seen before. Even though the board won't vote on these rates until June, the water authority issued a news release, the press release, that had the 14% number included in there before the board had considered it. We still haven't given all the details, which I thought was a little unusual. Normally, an agency doesn't advertise in the press how big the rate increases are going to be. I don't know whether that means they're going to be worse or better, but it's an interesting strategy. There was quite a bit of discussion, as Chair Hamilton knows. Kathleen Hedberg from Helix sent letters out to board members and board chairs and mayors around the county to say that, hey, we shouldn't, the water authority can't do this. And I understand her sentiment. Her rationale in her letter was more related to the impact of the agency having to do new Prop 218 hearings, as opposed to impact of ratepayers. And I think that, as Hayden would say, she should invert and rotate a little bit. But she did come to the meeting and speak to that. There were a lot of people who were very, very upset by it. Even at one point on the agenda, there was an item, as you're all aware, the emergency storage project hasn't been completed for the North County pump stations. That was contemplated and originally proposed in 1998, but still haven't been built. There were 3 pump stations, one to serve Valley Center and Uema, and the other 2, one each for Fallbrook and Rainbow. The Valley Center and Uema projects are moving forward, and this was the final bit to authorize construction to start for something these people have been paying for 25 years. Jimmy Ayala from San Diego made the motion. I seconded it because, these guys have worked. They've already paid way more than what this cost is over the time. But then a member from Helix Water made a motion to table it, to defer it to a few months, because, boy, we got to do the budget first. And that got seconded by a member from Sweetwater Authority. I took the opportunity at that point to press my speaker button and let them know that's a slap in the face to the people who you all have received this emergency storage service, that you've got. The ESP project is fully functional. In emergency, you can be served, but those of us in the north can't. And for you to sit here on a budget where you're looking at a 2-year, almost $2 billion budget, and try to block an $11 million expenditure for which they have already paid in cash, those people in Valley Center and Uema, is a slap in their face. And there was quite a discussion. They eventually rescinded their motion to table, and it went through and passed. But it shows you the level to where those of us that have been fighting for a quarter century to get the same treatment that others have are still facing an uphill battle. And it's a no-brainer to everyone else. And I explained to them, one of them asked me later, I said, Rainbow alone has paid in over $25 million in cash for ESP project funding. It still doesn't have the services that it promised over a quarter century ago. And so those sorts of things are still there. There was a robust discussion about it. And interestingly, after a lot of people spoke, one of the last people to speak was one of Mayor Gloria from San Diego's senior leaders over there, Nick Serrano, who, reading from what appeared to me to be a somewhat prepared statement, because it wasn't off the cuff, derided the 14% and say, there's no way the city will approve this. And there's no way that anything double digits will get there. which I thought was just because he's on the leadership, so he must have known this was coming. And I worry, and maybe it's my jaundiced cynicism of having been down there a long time and watching this thing, that the actual number they're looking for is 9.8, 9.9%. And some of the politicians said, let's put out a bigger number so we could whittle it down and everyone would be happy that we did so, which I think is crappy. I don't know that that's the case, but if the city of San Diego won't support that, and Lord knows we're not going to support it, and nobody else will, I just worry that we're now getting set up to where we're going to be happy with a 9.5 or 9.9% rate increase. And, you know, Andrea's never
That's
seen
still-
anyone do anything like that before in her career. Never,
That's
I've
still-
never seen that. That's just, so we'll see where this goes.
And 9.8 is still almost double what they had forecast.
Yeah, they were telling us to be 5 or 6%, and they're just 8-9 months ago with their last forecast.
Can't there be major pushback from from you guys on the board?
Yeah, I
then?
think that one of the things, and I congratulated them, I think one of the problems is it's a denominator problem. That the water authority has been artificially forecasting its sales. So if you have a need of X dollars divided by Y acre feet, if you make the denominator smaller, the number gets bigger, right? And so I think the 360 is more realistic. As opposed to saying 400, they could easily make this rate increase a smaller percentage. The revenue is going to be the same, the smaller percentage if they divide it by more acre feet. The real fact of the matter is, and we deal with it here as well. The volume of water has less to do with your costs than your big
fixed
infrastructure
costs, yeah.
needs, right? Your fixed costs are huge. The water authority's fixed costs are a massive component of it, but their actual fixed revenue is only 5% of their total revenue, right?
Sounds
I
like
think
they need
ours
to
is
do a
in the
budget
order of
revamp.
30% in that ballpark, or even higher than 35 percent. And that's hard for our ratepayers, but the water authority hasn't taken those hard steps. Reasons why they haven't taken those hard steps? The people who have the voting power don't want that to happen, because agencies like us, who are highly dependent on variable amounts, end up paying more than people who have these kind of level urban uses. And they like it that. But
How many of the districts have the same similar ratios that we do?
you know, you look at us, Valley Center, Fallbrook, Uwima, to some extent Escondido, but it's really the ag districts. There are other districts who have variable local supplies. You'll see Padre Dam Helix, Sweetwater, when the local reservoirs, you know, Cuyamaca or, you know, Sutherland and those things get rain, they'll have extra water, so they'll buy less, but then when they're dry, they have to buy more. And so there's people who wet year, dry year cycles come on and off for different reasons. So it's going to be an interesting couple months till this thing gets settled. One thing I did point out, and I made a recommendation, is that there's two actually. The Water Authority, as you may recall, got an $18 million, I believe, appropriation from the state to study the San Luis pumped energy, San Luis Reservoir, the San Vicente pump storage system.
Listen,
And the board approved them to move forward with that. Well, it came back with another appropriation. I believe it was $11 million. And I just asked to confirm, this is part of that state money, right? And they said, no, this isn't. And so I asked them to separate that from the rest of the budget, because one thing I know from my experience working on the Hodges Pump Storage Project, and you look at the electrical industry as general, we're not in the electricity business. And I don't want to use ratepayer money to fund a speculation that we might be able to create this pump storage system. If there's investors who would like to do that and we can partner with them, that's fine. If the state wants to help fund it, that's fine. But it's a speculative investment and it's not our core function. So we're hoping to say, let's not do that. Now, there's a lot of people say we need that hydropower. We need that peak power for the grid because solar renewables. I say, I don't dispute that. It's just that who needs to be funding the research into it? Should it be the water ratepayers when
No.
this is a
Yeah.
power thing? Where's SDG&E? The other thing that got added in is another $1.5 million for the regional conveyance system. And just like I have in each of the last several budget cycles, I asked, can you separate that out? Because I don't want to have to vote no for the whole budget because this crazy project is still in here. My guess is it's going to remain in there and we're not going to vote on it separately, but they still want to spend more money studying that. I thought it was pencils down, as Dan Denham was quoted in the paper, that we're not doing anything on that, but they need $1.5 million extra not to do anything. So that's the early look at it. We haven't gotten the full detailed budget document yet. We've got kind of snapshots and summaries of it, but from what we can see so far, it's a denominator problem that is, but that's something the water authority's got to face. And I think that as Jack Beebe was quoted in the paper, is that the water authority needs to be getting smaller, not bigger, because they need to right size themselves to their future. But that's not
Seems like
what's
they don't
happening.
want to.
Well, they're adding staff. They
That's-
want to add 4 new people in engineering. You want to add somebody to handle this, add somebody to handle that. It's like, at a certain point, guys.
That's what we were talking about on the.
You can
meeting.
reduce your marketing department by 50% and have extra heads.
It's all about priorities, and I'm going to do what I can to influence the board's direction on priorities, but there's other folks down there that have more votes. So that's my report.
CSDA,
I have nothing.
Barry, were you just attending? Or did you want to?
He's here for our item on the vote. I didn't see Barry come in. We have item 25.
Okay,
Up there.
Well, let's go with Aqua.
Yeah, it'll be coming up pretty quick. We're going to be cranking.
Okay.
These.
for the sake of his time, do we want to move 25 up above 19?
Yeah, that's right. We'll do it before the presentation. So move
We
it to
didn't-
19.
Didn't Meg have an Aqua report?
Yeah, he's a-
This was an aside to adjust the schedule to accommodate a very important person, a VIP. We have so few of those here.
I guess you're just a staff member now.
Oops.
Sorry, 2 VIPs.
Well, Flint's here too.
LAFCO report.
Let's see, the last LAFCO meeting, the main thing that they talked about was the Tri-City Palomar kerfuffle, and the commission, I believe, resolved it for now. We shall see. Another LAFCO matter that's been happening for some time is a conflict between the Mission Resource Conservation District and the RCD of Greater San Diego. And we're within the Mission Resource Conservation District, but for the last several decades, MRCD has been implementing the irrigation efficiency program through the Water Authority and had the contract, but did it all throughout San Diego County. And actually, they do some in Orange County too, which is out of their service area. There's been quite a bit of conflict, and they got a cease and desist letter from LAFCO, and it basically came down to scuttling that whole program, which is important to our ratepayers. And I know that Commissioner Willis and some of us, and I've talked with Darcy at the MRCD a number of times, and Ann down at Greater San Diego, and trying to encourage them to get together. And through the Water Authority, trying to encourage them. When this contract came up, I said, hey, there's a LAFCO issue. You got to resolve this. Well, it looks like in a special meeting they held last week, which I watched remotely, the two parties are open to doing an MOU, because you used to have a memorandum of understanding years ago, but then they got canceled, to reopen that so that they can both share in the prospect of performing these services, which is a plus. It's been a difficult thing. I know that Commissioner Willis has made a lot of phone calls in that regard, trying to get these folks together. And it looks like we're finally getting there after 6 or 8 months or a year of this sort of back and forth. So
More than
I think that's a positive. And I got to give a shout out to Adam Wilson, who's the consultant to LAFCO, who's been moderating both our stuff, but also dealing with those. And he did a good job getting them to the table and getting that resolved. Also, LAFCO meetings are going to start at 8 a.m. from here on out.
8 a.m.
8 a.m. start times.
Well, that makes it tough to
Downtown.
try to get down there from here.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, with the traffic on the 15 now, you just
Leave it
out
old
an hour
dark
before almost, it's one of those things.
Can they defer public comment until 10?
It tells you how many commissioners come from north of this area.
I know. I had to put that in. Sorry, Barry. Santa Margarita River Watershed Water Master Steering Committee won't meet until April. Aqua,
Yeah. Aqua has a statewide public education campaign called Quench California. They have launched a paid partnership. Paid partnerships that are now available. Might be worthwhile to see whether we're eligible or not.
yeah.
I guess they're encouraging member agencies to utilize the toolkit items, including customizable social media posts and graphics, campaign logos, handouts, and 4 videos of 3 different lengths with Spanish subtitles to complement local outreach efforts. And, talking about water infrastructure.
I'm sure Carlene's taking notes,
Yeah.
just as an aside for the board. And
Yeah.
I told Hayden that we have a candidate that's accepted an offer, a very great candidate for become our part-time communications person.
Oh, great.
Person with a ton of experience and a master's degree in communications who will help give this information to it and really up our game.
There's a ton of bills in the assembly that have been introduced dealing with water rights. A lot of them providing sweeping authority to the state water board, to basically enforce curtailment of diversions, challenging water rights, et cetera.
God.
Aqua's opposed to pretty much all of them. There's SB 23, that is a bill to streamline the permitting process to make it quicker for agencies to be able to capture water. And I'll talk a little bit more about it. I went to the legislative conference or symposium, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit. I guess Governor Newsom did an order which expedited flood water use for recharge. One more, I think. Oh. San Diego County Water Authority got $3 million to grant funds to install water efficient toilets and smart irrigation controllers in underrepresented community.
That must be us.
They also got a $180 million loan from EPA loan
Loan.
for fixing the Bud Lewis desal plant.
Yep.
Yeah. And last but not least, as a item of note, Eastern Municipal Water District, a neighbor, about 20% of their drinking water is supplied by their groundwater wells. So that's a goal that we ought to try and aspire to. in our strategic
If we
plan.
could find something to second. Yeah.
It's in the works.
That's called the Santa Maria Margarita watershed.
Well, we're going to be probably presenting to you in our June meeting some of the results from the study that's ongoing.
Oh, great.
Good.
Yeah.
It's looking pretty positive.
And just a real quick, April 26th, 28th is a Central Valley tour. May 17th, 9th and 11th is the spring conference. May 17th and 19th is the Bay Delta tour. So, and if you got one of these guys, the info's in there.
In there.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that all?
For-
Anything else?
For that,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, we'll move on to the next thing where you can speak again, which is meeting, workshops, committees and seminars.
Yeah. I provided everybody 3 cut sheets. One's the agenda of the symposium I attended. It was basically 2 parts. One had to do, it was a water infrastructure panel. And then the other one was a water rights panel. The water infrastructure panel basically was talking about trying to, well, kind of introducing the team that is working together. Let me get the right names. Let's see. It was Kip Flipper, who's an aide to Tony Atkins, who I guess is majority leader in the assembly, or Senator Pro Tem, excuse me. There was a lady from the Nature Conservancy, Michael Quigley, who's with Lands for Jobs. It's an organization that puts together the business organizations and labor unions, et cetera, and help focus them on supporting different bills. And what they were basically talking about is about 18 billion in a bond issue to come out in like 2024, 2025.
Oh, God.
About 7.8 billion is what Aqua has proposed on this, and that's that what second cut sheet or third cut sheet, which is the infrastructure bond priorities. They've done a lot of, I guess, polling, and the number seems to be, from what they're getting, between 15 and 18 billion is acceptable. And it sounds like a lot of the people that, 60 to 70%, 72% agree that there's a need for the infrastructure to capture the water when it shows up, that there isn't enough of that.
I think they're
So-
finding that out in the Central Valley right now.
Yep, yeah. The interesting thing was they admitted, and what you were talking about earlier about the, was it 2016 bill? All that money that got grabbed, that's still sitting there someplace.
Still sitting there.
It's
Yeah.
never been spent.
And they brought up specifically, hey, if you're gonna go after trying to, get it
Ask for
through
more.
and ask for more, you better have gotten rid of or distributed everything that you've been sitting on.
Productively used, I would hope. I
Yeah,
bet they could find a way to get rid of it.
yeah.
Bullet
right.
trains or something.
So, it was a pretty good gathering, gave a lot of good insight into what the plan forward is for the next couple of years. And I sat at the table with, Joe McKenzie
Okay.
and, a couple of other people. It was, like I said, pretty well received. I
Just
thought.
as I said before, I don't have a huge amount of faith in the
Yeah.
state issuing bonds and actually doing something with the money.
Yeah.
There are too many private interest groups that want to interfere. Which
So, that's it.
we'll find out in the legal report today.
Yeah.
Any other workshops or committees or seminars? Do you have any comments relative to your tour experience?
That was great.
Great.
The problem is I can never remember the three S's.
I can't either. That's okay.
Seismic, something.
Settling.
Seismic settling in, and I missed the third one. I've got in the same way,
Really interesting.
subsidence, no.
Subsides.
Yeah,
Subside.
subsidence.
What she's talking about are the three critical factors associated with the Bay Delta region. Critical path is seismic, major earthquake would potentially, and we're due, we're over 130 years out on a 100-year cycle. A major earthquake in the Bay Delta region on the San Andreas or the Hayward Fault could essentially cut our water off from the north. There would be no water coming down through the State Water Project because the flow in the Bay Delta to get water to the State Water Project export area is all governed by levees. So if you flood the levees, you're going to have brackish water backflow into the upper regions and no way to move the water south. Thus, the need for what used to be twin tunnels is now Una Tunnel project. The subsidence is essentially the sinking. One of the
Level rise.
Huh?
I found it. Sea level rise.
sea level rise. Yeah, sea level rise.
I Googled it.
A sea level rise of 4 feet would essentially take out about 30% of the Bay Delta. I tried to get the video for that. They actually have a time lapse video showing what the effective sea level rise by foot over time. In other words, what would happen in Bay Delta if it comes up 2 feet? What would happen if it comes up 5 feet? What would happen if it comes up 10 feet? And at the 4 to 5 foot level it basically says we have no water coming from the north.
Right.
At 10 foot, you've just basically destroyed a whole economic region up in there. By the way, one of the interesting sidelines is the State Water Project influences in the South about $300 billion a year in as an economic engine driver. The influence of the proponents that do not want change, because by the way, all those levies, everywhere you drive on those levies, you see signs, privately owned, permission by authorization only. Oh, but it's maintained by state funds.
Mm.
Okay. That's about a $30 billion economic engine. But they have a very loud voice in the government in Sacramento. So then they're close by, which helps. So it's an interesting dilemma that we're faced with in terms of having to rely on a system that's somewhat broken and very susceptible to failure at this
Yeah.
stage.
Yeah, something's got to get done.
Yeah.
Who pays for it?
Yeah.
Well, the money
Hey,
was sitting there, but CEQA has. stopped
At a
it.
$300 billion economic engine, everybody in the state should pay for it. I'm sorry,
Right.
you know. Whether it's maintaining the levees and things. The problem that the Bay Delta farmers have is that they're afraid that if the tunnel gets built, the need to maintain the levees will go away, which means they're out of business. So that's why they're fighting it so hard. You know, it seems like the simple solution is to write in to any proposal, a levee maintenance program. But anyway, any other meetings, workshops, or reports? Thank you for bringing that up, by the way. That was director's comments. Legal comments.
Hold on, Director Mack, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was gonna.
Oh, I'm sorry. You didn't jump on that, Ralph.
It was just,
Yes, I got a phone call about 4 or 5 days ago from a nice gentleman. He talked to Mig previously. I guess Mig and him meet on some meetings on Thursdays, and he is offering a portion of his land. I believe he lives on Rainbow Heights, and he talking to Mig, or he read about the Holly hydrants, and he wants to donate some of his land to have one installed in Division 5. So
yeah, so just get us the location and Robert will run it past CAL FIRE to see if that's an appropriate location, because the pilots pick the spots, not us. And then we can see where we can take it from there.
Okay. Nice to know that we have that support from the community, though.
I lived out there. I'd want one on some part of my property
Yeah,
too.
too, yeah. And then I call my insurance company and say, hey, look at this.
My insurance. rate.
Any other director's comments? Thank you, Director Mack. Alfred.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, I did a written report. I provided an update on 2 topics. I originally had prepared the report on the new wastewater discharging permitting case and did a report on that, but then the SDCWA versus MWD Superior Court decision came out, so I thought you'd be interested.
Superior Court, yeah.
Superior Court, exactly. So I did an update on that as well. On the first topic, it's an appellate court decision and essentially limits the scope of the State Water Board and the Regional Water Quality Control Board in regulating discharge permits under the NPDES program. Essentially what happened there was a private nonprofit group brought suit against the agencies, alleging they were discharging already treated wastewater into the ocean and arguing that that was a waste, that it was reasonable, and that the state and regional water quality control boards had an affirmative duty to take action to prevent that and to investigate and take enforcement actions. And the agencies involved said, this was, for decades ago, this is what it was determined to be feasible. This is what we're doing. We're operating within the scope of our permit. To do something different would be this, tremendously huge process, very expensive. Who's going to pay for that? The whole thing. So it generated statewide interest. Aqua filed an amicus curiae brief in support of the local agencies involved, as did the California Association of Sanitation Agencies, Water Reuse, pretty much all of the water and public agency interest groups. And those amicus brief argued that the trial court's ruling that was an unconstitutional expansion of the state and regional water boards authority. It was unprecedented. by finding that the state board had a mandatory duty to enforce the reasonable use doctrine, 'cause that's what they're trying to rely on here, against a wastewater discharge. It just had never been done before, had no ruling in prior case law, the California Constitution, or the Water Code, and that is set a vague and unenforceable mandate. They asked, if this was the law, it provides water agencies essentially with no way of knowing, when, how, and under what factual circumstances the state board would just come in and undertake these newly found powers to determine whether in what's already permitted a discharge was a waste. And so the appellate court agreed. They came out with this very favorable decision for water agencies, for public agencies in general, preserves local autonomy for wastewater discharges, and really reduces litigation exposures from private entities from these sort of claims. So happy to provide some good
Thumbs
news
up.
on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree with the decision. My question is what was you care to speculate on what the end objective of the plaintiff was in this case?
I think they wanted the water to be used for recycling instead, to do like some sort of water recycling project instead of, they were arguing that, the water has been treated, but you're just discharging it to the ocean, and they want it to be, and I think at the time.
Then,
brought this through
then
the
it-
middle of a
why
document.
didn't they cover all the agencies instead of just the 4?
Good question. I think they went after the big pockets.
big boys.
The big
The
boys.
big
They
boys.
went after the city of Los Angeles and some of the
Yeah.
biggest plants in LA County. And they wanted them to spend all this money doing some, new project that would have to go through CEQA and, spend how much money, but they weren't offering to pay for any of it or anything. They just.
Well, I also noticed they took a $700,000 hit as a result of this too, which
Absolutely right.
for a nonprofit is a pretty substantial hit.
Very substantial. That's exactly right. Yes, and that's the big deal. That's the big deal. They ran up all those legal fees on these arguments, and the court at the end of the day said this wasn't, what was beneficial to the public or in the best interest of, the quote unquote private attorney general doctrine that they were trying to go after.
Well,
The big disincentive for them to do it.
it was legislation through the court rather than through the legislature as well.
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's a big part of their strategy for some of these agencies that they want to, promote these sort of arguments instead of actually going through the legislature and doing the process, getting the elected representatives and people who are really looking at this. They want to use the courts to kind of do this legislation and then try to get their attorney fees at the end of the day. So, yeah. Very favorable for a lot of reasons.
Your water authority report?
Oh, yeah, the Water Authority, the update on the, of course, it's been years and years, long going litigation between SDCWA and NWD, but this part of the battle is a very big victory for MWD, the Metropolitan Water District. This particular case revolved around the exchange agreement that was entered, it's been 20 years ago between MWD and SDCWA, essentially trade some of SDCWA's Colorado River water to MWD in exchange for MWD delivering water of like quantity and quality to SDCWA. And that exchange agreement originated because SDCWA couldn't get all of its Colorado water other than by using MWD's aqueduct. So the big issue in this agreement in this case was the price term. And the price term said the price shall be equal to the charges set by MWD's Board of Directors pursuant to applicable law and regulation generally applicable to MWD's conveyance of water on behalf of MWD's member agents. So the contract price term really favored MWD. But as the SDCWA, they're not happy with the terms. They argue MWD breached the contract, allege that, MWD is essentially overcharging the transportation rate, not providing offsetting benefits. And they calculated damages to the tunes of $300 million for this. And interesting, in support of SDCWA's argument, they really relied on the wheeling law, which, does consider a wide variety of factors in price if you're dealing with the wheeling agreement. The problem is that the court said this is not a wheeling agreement, this is a transfer agreement. And because wheeling agreements are more about just using excess capacity in another agency system, whereas a transfer agreement deals with delivery of a specific quantity of water rather than just the ability to use that excess capacity. And they went all the way back to the, 20 years ago, the emails between the party and just everything they were talking about to determine what, whether it was a wheeling agreement, whether it was a transfer agreement, all of this. And so once the court made the decision that this is a transfer agreement, they said, NWD charged appropriately within the terms of the contract, and there was no breach of contract by MWD. And I'll also note this was a conclusion predicted by our general manager many, many years.
I can read.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I really
His Wikipedia law degree came in valuable.
Exactly.
or common sense, these lawsuits been going on for almost 15 years. Well, the enmity over it, the only reason the lawsuits didn't start sooner is that in their 2003 agreement, the Water Authority agreed not to sue for at least 5 years. And so the first rate cases started in 2008. And so it's been a long road to get here. But each point along the way, there's always been appeal. And while if I have any say over the Water Authority, we won't appeal because, as I said before, I think that the Met and the Water Authority need to start getting on the same page. This whole fighting each other is counterproductive to the best interest of all of our ratepayers. The Water Authority will send out a press release saying we've earned a total of 92 or 93 million dollars in awards over 15 years,
Yeah.
and
It's
most of that was attorney's fees
Mhm.
reimbursement. And as you call, we got some of those checks back, and then interest. The actual awards are well under $50 million. And if you look at somebody who's, almost $1 billion a year agency over 15 years, that's a very small percentage. And but the cloud that hangs over the relationship between the two agencies due to it is counterproductive in a way that cost us a lot more. So my advice to them has always been, you'll do better in the boardroom than the courtroom. And now they find themselves with leadership positions at the Met, and they should really take this opportunity to hit the reset button. Let's stop this nonsense. Because even if, let's say, the Water Authority had won this argument, it goes back to Met to determine what this offsetting benefit calculation is, because under the wheeling statute, the conveyor gets to decide what that benefit is, and then they would come with a number. Then there'd be a whole nother lawsuit. This just never ends. And so I think that hopefully they'll do that. I think there's also a full Employment for Lawyers Act in place at the Water Authority that may keep this thing going, which would be regrettable. I wish I could say here I'm confident that they'll say, oh, well, let's bury the hatchet, guys. But my guess is they'll vote to appeal. And this is only a tentative ruling, mind you. But if you ever get a chance, read the ruling. It's very clear. The judge
Yeah.
lays out the rationale. And Alfred did a great job summarizing. And I apologize for Alfred because he sent the attorney report over and I didn't look at it. I'm like, hey, are you going to do anything on the Med Act? And he's like the one I just sent over? I'm like, oh, yeah. And it just happened,
Okay, thank you very much, Alfred. Good reports as usual. Always mentally stimulating.
Appreciate that.
Committee reports. Flint, Budget and Finance Committee.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, members of the board. The Budget and Finance Committee met on March the 14th. And you have two items on your calendar that the committee heard and recommended that you move forward with. One of them is your item number 19, which is the presentation on both the water and the wastewater financial plan and cost of service. We heard that presentation. It's excellent. And I think you'll enjoy it, and we recommend it highly. And then secondly, you have item number 27, which is recommending that Bill Stewart be named a member of the Budget and Finance Committee. And Bill has history with that committee, good history with that committee. And so we are recommending that go forward and that you approve his appointment. You want me to do the other one too?
Yes, please.
Okay, engineering operations met on March the 1st. And you have two items on your calendar that the committee considered. One of them is number 23 on your calendar, the Montserrat Winery Notice of Completion. The committee supported that. And a very rare occurrence, but your item number 24 was actually a difference of opinion between the committee and the staff on that. And we can, whatever your pleasure is, we can hear that now. We can wait until you take the item up, or you can just proceed without hearing the difference of opinion at all,
Oh,
whatever.
we want it.
Whatever.
Yeah,
My gut feeling is that it probably makes more sense to take it up when you hear the presentation on that item, but I hear at your service, okay?
I appreciate that. Let's defer the comments until.
And that's all we
get
have.
that up.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Communication and Customer Service Committee.
Yes.
I'm looking at Carlene because I think she's the only other person on the committee who's in
We-
attendance.
We were both there, so I think we can hit on some of the items that we
Ac-
discussed.
Actually,
talked-
I have a summary of the minutes.
Oh, you
If
do?
you'd like me to go through and you can add to what I'm missing
Sure.
since I wasn't there.
I have.
Under the general manager comments, at the last board meeting, we basically decided to split customer services administration from communications. Carlene has implemented a program to go out and find a customer services manager. And as Tom said earlier, we are reallocating some of the previous costs associated with the former management to fund a part-time communications committee manager, if you will. And we apparently have a candidate standing in the wings, ready to
We
sign
have
up.
an accepted offer and someone's scheduled to start April 17th.
Cool.
And we might invite her to the banquet, even though it's technically before her start date, but.
You can always invite outsiders to attend your participations. So those were the two big items I think that were covered in that. Tom gave some additional comments on CIP project. That's redundant in it. CIP update presentation on what was in the pipeline on some projects. Detachment update obviously is an ongoing activity for all committees, I think. The big one was the Rainbow headquarters becoming a field trip destination. And I think Carlene's actually going to talk a little later on a scheduled event. Is that correct?
So we had an event scheduled and the atmospheric river arrived that day instead of the field trippers. So we have rescheduled it for April 27th. So that the lower yard was a lake and we thought that wouldn't be the safest environment to invite guests to.
Was Andrea here that day? Probably.
Swimming between your car and the office, right? Anyway, this is an excellent opportunity for community interaction and I, thoroughly encourage we continue these programs and activities. There was discussion regarding online bill pay and higher rates of adoption for online. Tracy basically informed us that about 69% of our customers are currently using online payment options or automatic payment options. Only 8% of our customers prefer to walk in and drop off a check. Mr. Shute basically inquired on how we could try to get the 69% up to about a 75%. Communications calendar events, we obviously have the Avocado Festival staring us in the face at the end of the month, which we plan to participate in. And
And we'll have our new public relations person there.
on board by then, that would be excellent, yeah. April 7th, any possibility she could attend the communications meeting on April 2nd?
Probably not. She gave 3 weeks notice,
I know.
their current employer. So, the banquet is outside of her normal working hours. So I think she might be able to do that just as a fun thing, but.
Okay. It would be nice if she could without
It's hard to
causing
get
any
people to do
problems.
stuff when they're working for somebody else.
Yeah, well, it might be able, she could take a long lunch or a long afternoon dinner or whatever. But anyway.
You can see.
And then the committee membership reappointments, we're recommending that Bill Shute be reappointed under the admin code. We have to do a reappointment every 4 years, and Mr. Shute, who is the committee chair, is up for reappointment, and he's interested in continuing to participate. And then the 70th anniversary activities were discussed. So that's kind of a highlight of what happened in our activities. Anything you guys want to add?
So I did do a presentation on sort of the options for the 70th anniversary. If we just do kind of an anniversary event towards the end of the year, which would coincide with the actual 70th anniversary of the district. The cost is about 15,000. If we were to do a brand refresh, create a new logo, existing district name, as sort of using that anniversary as the opportunity to kind of refresh our brand, that would be probably in about an additional $10,000. And then other brand assets would just be replaced on their normal replacement interval. So those are expenses that would happen anyway, about 38,000, but they're expenses that we would have incurred anyway. And then we did talk about the cost for a potential name change, since the board had suggested that might be a possibility at the last board meeting. And it's a ballpark of, on the low end of 50,000, on the high end about 185, probably somewhere in the middle for a full name change. So the feedback from the committee was that that's probably not something we should pursue until after a detachment issue happens. So we can move forward with just a
70th
logo, just an anniversary event, just a brand refresh without pursuing the possibility of a name change. But that's what was discussed for that item.
Okay. Thank you. Tracy, anything to add?
That was it.
Okay. At this time, we'll move to item number 25, the discussion and possible action regarding ballot and vote certification from the San Diego Local Agency Commission, LAFCO, for a regular and alternate special district members on LAFCO Commission.
So we're happy day to welcome Barry Willis as our current LAFCO commissioners for the special district, one of the special district seats. He's one of the candidates here for the regular seat. There's two other candidates, one from North County Fire and Mission Resource Conservation District. And then for the alternate seat, Dave Drake, who someone many of you know is also up. I can't remember who Dave's got. Griffith, Palomar Healthcare District. So I know Barry wanted to say a few words. Barry, the floor is yours.
Albert, I always love seeing that. Big smile. Oh, appreciate that.
So, good afternoon, board members, President Hamilton, Mig, Townsend Smith, Director Moss, and Director Mack. Did I get it right? Or Director? Yeah, good. I got it right. All right. Just came back from Borrego Springs. Just picked up Borrego Springs Water District for their vote. Found out I got Santa Fe Irrigation District this morning. And moving it forward, got 4 board meetings, 4 board votes yesterday. You know what I'm finding out, like anything in life, when you put in the hard work, you get results.
How many have you been to now, Barry?
40. So no, wait a minute, I'm under 50 now. 54.
54.
So I'm about 3 short. I was just adding up
Hardworking man in LAFCO politics.
At the cost of gas these days, that's impressive.
I just looked at the mileage. I'm between 5,000 and 6,000 miles on my car just for this. But I'm at a Cumba tonight, so don't tell my opponent though. So I don't want him following me. I don't want him following me around. Anyway, I just thought I'd give you guys a quick board update. I'm up 25-7. So when I get 5 more votes, I've got a majority and it's done. So very close.
Can you call us when you get 4 and we'll give you the kick over the top?
Well, I could use your vote today, as you know, but I got FPUD last night, North County Cemetery District last night. Palma Valley Community Services District, UEMA. I was waiting for Amy. I went and visited them yesterday. I was looking forward on the agenda. So Amy, I finally got a chance to talk to Amy before the Amy. I thought you guys would have live calendar. Oh, we already voted for you. I gave Amy a big hug. I said, Amy, I'm hoping you're okay with that big hug. Oh yeah, that's no big deal to me.
You gotta be careful.
I know. But Borrego Springs Water District was great. I went out there and I was a unanimous vote. And I find that when you show up and you show up with us as someone who cares, who really listens, and to take the extra time. Don Butts is the one I have a good relationship with.
Yeah, mission.
Because he's involved with
Greater San Diego.
Radio San Diego RCD and Lakeside Fire. And I've gotten to know Don. We went to lunch the other day. I bought lunch. So any problem with the 700 form on that? Okay. Just something.
If it was Del Taco,
No,
no.
if you-
It was
no, if you bought lunch.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway, had a great lunch with him to understand his perspective, because I'm trying to get both sides to really understand, because they think that they both understand each other, but they don't understand each other. And it's just an interesting process, because now I need to get back to Mission RCD. So this is how they see it. This is how they see the process. Now, you mentioned, I don't want to take it much longer. You mentioned Tri-City and
Palomar.
That was a tough one, because no matter which way I voted, I was going to lose that vote. So pick your poison. But I listened to, you listen to all sides. I listened to all those Tri-City employees come up with all the passion. I not only listened to what this person is saying, I listened to the passion in their voice. And I listened to Tri-City and how concerned they were. And it didn't make sense to me to continue that contract for Palomar. So I voted against it. I was in the minority, but I think that I had to vote my conscience. And with this upcoming vote, it's going to be hard to make everybody happy, right? But I love talking to Al Lau. I love talking to the GMs. I listen to everybody. And I'm going to come out of this with this next detachment vote. I'm going to come away with very well informed vote, and I want it to be reasonable what they come up with, So I appreciate you guys. Meg, I appreciate you. And if you guys have any thoughts or questions of me, I know you guys are getting ready to take the vote, but I'm pretty excited. The hard work is paying off, and I got 3 more votes I might get tonight, as a matter of fact. So I'm getting a lot closer. Guys,
Thank you.
appreciate your time.
Any additional discussion?
Thank you very much.
So the question is what are our options?
Well, it's a ballot, so you get to vote for one of the listed nominees, or you're writing a choice for the special or the alternate, or you can vote for just the regular and no vote for an alternate, or vote for an alternate, none for the regular. We didn't give a specific recommendation. Obviously Barry is if I was voting, I vote for Barry and Dave Drake, but it's up to you guys.
Why don't we take a poll on for the regular position? We have James Pinnock, Ross Pike, or Barry. All those in favor of Barry, why don't you raise your hand? 4 and 1 abstention. So Barry, you have our vote.
Shock.
Can I make that a motion?
Yeah.
Well, maybe go through this and then make a motion to approve. it.
Okay.
And they'll figure out who you want to be for the alternate.
On the
between-
alternate position, we have David Drake or Jeff Griffith. Those in favor of David Drake?
That's
Four
four
and
and
one
one
abstention. Okay. And that basically eliminates Jeff. So do I have a motion relative to formalizing these votes?
I so
So-
move.
I'll second.
That's for Barry Willis for regular and Dave Drake.
Drake
alternate.
for alternate. Moved by Director Gasca, seconded by Director Mack. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? And one abstention? So
So
four ayes and one abstention. All right. Thank you, Barry.
I'm gonna hang around for a while.
Cool. We'll move back to item number 19
Our turn.
for the presentations, water and wastewater cost service presentation. Our alternate employee.
And you guys all know Andrea from IB Consulting. She's going to start with a quick PowerPoint to bring back some of the wastewater options we talked about last time, and then go through the preliminary water cost of service study. And then we're going to spend a little bit of time on the model.
Thank you guys for having me again here, and thankfully it is not raining this time.
Oh, just hold your breath. Wait until tomorrow.
Yeah.
Hey, but I'm here today, so it counts. Real quick, we're gonna go hopefully very quickly through the wastewater. You guys have already seen everything in regards to that. I'll just go very, very quickly. If you have questions, please go ahead and interrupt me and we will talk about it then. We're gonna go over the outlook and then the rate alternatives that we're exploring. And then we'll talk about water financial outlook. I don't believe you guys have seen that yet. The Budget and Finance Committee has. And then we're going to go one step further and actually jump into the water model so we can see what some of those policy decisions that we're going to be asking you guys to make at the next meeting, how they really impact your customers. Okay. So starting with wastewater, we want to be very clear about the assumptions that we're using in the financial plan. Nothing here has changed except for the salaries escalation from what you've seen previously. So we bumped that up to 6% based off of recommendations from staff. I believe you guys are still exploring benefits. Is that correct, Carlene? Okay.
yeah, we won't know until August what the actual amount is.
Okay, that's going to be too late to really make any adjustments for the study. So are you comfortable with the 3%? I hate to put you on the spot, but we need to make a decision here if we're going to change it.
That's the best we can do.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we're gonna continue with the 3% for benefits. Then I think it's worth pointing out the treatment costs. You guys send your wastewater flows to Oceanside. We're escalating those at 6%, but I do recommend that you implement a pass-through provision for them, meaning that if it goes up by more than that 6%, you can pass it on to your customers. Okay. And I'm just noting there that those treatment costs are completely outside of your guys' control, and it does account for 35% of your operating expenses. Okay. Can I move that? I'll just move it over. Oh, no, I won't. How about that? All right. So this is your operating financial plan for the wastewater enterprise. If you'll recall, the black solid line is your revenues. It's at current rates, so that means no adjustments have been made. The red dash trend line is your operating expenditures based off of all of our assumptions that we've just shown you. And then the red there, bars below mean that we're operating a negative cash flow for the wastewater enterprise. And it's about over there to the right, you can see it's about 765 in 2023. This is just operating. It does not include any capital funding. Uh-oh. Make it work. It went away, guys. Sorry. Thank you. So this is the capital plan for wastewater. It has had a slight adjustment to it. So this is the schedule. We don't have any CIP plan for 24 or 25, and we pick back up again in 2026.
There's a big one we're doing right now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then what we're also showing there is that big project, that Thoroughbred Lane lift station, that is going to be mostly wrapped up in 2023, and it's largely funded by CFD. So it shouldn't impact your rates moving forward. If we funded all that capital, this would be ending reserve balances after funding capital. You can see we have, you can barely see it, but we do have reserves at the end of 2023. But if we do nothing and no adjustments, you're going to essentially run out of funds for your operating of your wastewater enterprise. This is typical for a rate study where, if you guys remember back when I came before, that we haven't updated rates since 2018. So we just need to catch back up. And so with that, we have a proposed financial plan. We want to eliminate the operating deficit first and foremost. Then we want to make sure that we're establishing an operating reserve and funding it. And then we want to make sure that we build up for that capital reserve funding. We're going to show you two options. Scenario one is where we defer CIP for the whole 5-year planning period. And then scenario two, we're going to go with that CIP plan that I just showed you guys right here. Okay. But we're going to issue a debt in fiscal year 2026 to finance that. It would be around 9.5 million.
It also presumes no new development, no extra cap
Right.
fees, worst case scenario.
Worst case scenario is scenario one. And with that, this is what the dollar amounts related to those CIPs are, right? And if we defer it, obviously you're not going to have any CIP unless you guys have development come in, then they will help fund any capital going on during that 5-year period. The planned CIP, you can see the level there. It's 2.7 million in 2026, followed by 3.5 and then 3.6 in 2028. I bolded those because I am going to propose that you guys do that with a debt issuance. And there's a few reasons for that. A biggest reason is it's going to help stabilize your revenues, and it's going to spread those costs over the users that are going to benefit from those facilities or those assets. So, assets have a long extended life, 50, 60, 70 years. If we do a debt issuance, it'll at least spread it over, anywhere from 15 to 30 years. The revenue adjustments that you see there are in relation to those two plans. With we defer CIP, we're going to need an initial revenue adjustment, which does not mean a rate adjustment, of 40%. The reason that we need such a large initial one-time adjustment is so we can get over that operating deficit. The sooner you guys make that hard call, and the sooner you get them in, the better impact it's going to have on your rates down the line. Okay. But what does this really mean in terms of, like I said, it's not a necessarily one-to-one. This is what it's going to mean in terms of your rates through your different two options. You'll see that on the deferred CIP, that 40% adjustment is really going to reflect a $69.04 for your regular typical single family 1 EDU.
And that's monthly or?
This is monthly.
Okay,
$14 a month.
okay.
Okay.
I just wanted to know the period, whether it was.
And then you can see how it's going to grow over the course of the 5-year period, right? You're going to go from 69.04 up to 99.22. But keep in mind, under that scenario, you guys are deferring your CIP. So that next time you guys do a study, you're going to phase back in the CIP, which could mean that your rates are going to spike again at the end of that period. We're trying to avoid that in this scenario, but that's the risk you run into. We're building up. If you remember in the plan that I showed you, we're building up those reserves so that you can phase it back in. So hopefully it works out great, but we don't have a crystal ball. If you have another really high inflationary period, your costs are just going to be greater the further you pass them out, the longer you defer them. So from a rate consultant standpoint, if I were recommending a plan, I would definitely go with scenario 2. But it's really going to come down to you guys thinking about what you feel comfortable with and what level of adjustments you're going to be okay recommending. And then I'm going to go one step further. This is the rate comparison to your region. You can see scenario 1 is that $69.04, like I mentioned. If you debt finance, we do have a lower adjustment in the first year, but then of course by 2028, it'll be at a higher amount. I would also point out that I know for a fact Escondido's rates are going up because we're doing them right now. They're just going to continue to go up as well. And if you guys had done the rates from the last study, you would be at 73.58 right now.
When
ahead.
you do the comparisons over here, are
Yes.
these current rates or projected rates?
They're current rates.
Okay, so if I were in Fallbrook right now, I'd be paying $135 a month for wastewater treatment.
Correct.
Yeah, I think this chart's indicative of why we find ourselves where we are. But we haven't been keeping up with where we needed to be, and there's a myriad reasons for that. Our
Right.
reserves were fat and happy. Then when the big project comes along, it eats them up. And so, you know, you use reserves as kind of your bellwether to see where you're at. So if you have cushion, when you have no cushion, then you have a different set of scenarios in front of you. But
Right. And if we hold too high a reserves, the state could come in and require us to pay them back.
Yeah.
So we have to be really careful with that.
When we talk about deferred CIP, what are the CIP projects we're deferring?
there's a whole range of different things. The biggest CIP issues we have relate to conveyance through the main trunks down there, and the lift station, 1/3, but lift station project is part of it. A lot of these ones that come after that are ones related to, one of the things that we'll be focusing on are lining older vitrified clay pipes where we get the water intrusion and things like that. There are some older pump stations that need some tender loving care. But if you see in there, there's a lot of CIPP lining and things like that in there, which are important for us. Wet well expansion in the Rancho Viejo, as we've been experiencing here, and whenever it rains, our system was built with very little storage capacity. The Thoroughbred lift station, boy, we wish we had that now, because on 3 occasions this winter, we've had to truck wastewater to the tune of 100,000 gallons over a 24-hour period. There's 350,000 gallons of storage there. We wouldn't have that problem. So that's going to be a big difference. But at each location, in order to balance it out as we go through the system, it's handy to have some of that stuff. But what one of our main focuses on here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 different CIPP, cured in place pipe projects in there to prevent all that excess groundwater and rainwater from getting into the system. So does that characterize it fair enough, Robert?
Yeah, and I can elaborate in the operation manager comments about how we handled the rains and what we transported, et cetera. But
I think you should, Robert.
that thoroughbed is going to be a big help to us.
Sorry, didn't mean to take you out of your sequence.
All good.
I do it to her all the time.
That's why we put it there, just in case you guys need to see it. The only other thing that we really didn't bring up, and I believe we brought it up at the last meeting, was that if possible, I believe Tracy's gonna potentially look at, if you guys give her the direction to put the wastewater on your property tax bill. So that would be helpful. A lot of customers or a lot of agencies are doing that right now and trying to do that just to give some relief during the month to month. Obviously, the customers still will see it. They'll just see it paid through their taxes instead.
I think it's quite interesting to see the differential between Rainbow and Fallbrook. And Fallbrook has 70% residential and we only have 30% residential. And that's a pretty big gap.
But they've got the waste treatment plant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And so all that has to feed into.
and especially if, you know, we're in a larger regional plant with Oceanside, there's economies of scale there, even though it isn't cheap, it represents 35% of our costs. When you have to operate your own plant and we're making recycled water as well, and you have challenges to disposal, that's, you know, those things all add up. But they're also an older system than ours, and so they probably have different capital needs. You know, Fallbrook's now 100 years old, and I'm not sure how long their wastewater system's been running, not the whole time, but and so it's hard to say in each agency whether a rate is fair or unfair. These comparators are always difficult to make.
Right.
But it, you know, it's unusual to be at the very bottom, at least for us. Yeah. Well, and if you look at a big city like San Diego, the rates will be cheaper because there's just so many people crammed together, right?
Yeah.
But around here, it's so spread out. I mean, if you drive down Little Gopher Canyon Road and imagine those houses have sewer connections out there, and you're like, wow, this is a crazy place for someone to have not be on septic, right? And so it's pretty remarkable that they're this low.
So I just want you guys to consider this. If there's any other scenarios or options I need to bring forward,
Tracy,
I love
when do
new
you guys
feedback.
need to get feedback from the board on whether
So,
to initiate
Ap-
action to?
April 25th, we'll be coming to the board with the staff's recommendation to open the rate hearing for both wastewater and water. Staff was going to come forward with scenario 2 as our recommendation, because there's still going to be a lot of stop gaps before we issue debt, before we do that year 3 CIP plan. Those are both items that the board would have to vote on. A lot can change in 2 to 3 years. We could end up getting additional developer fees. So it just give us a little bit more options.
I mean, this is a worst case scenario, zero growth.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah,
As I recall, your projected 5-year rate was about 108.
Correct.
Plan 2. So it's still substantially mid-range, if you will.
yes, I mean,
not
theirs are
in-
gonna escalate just.
Yeah,
it's
not even
inflationary.
considering escalation.
Right.
for-
Right.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, it would be.
if the
Just
board
like Fallbrook is today.
if the board did open the rate hearing and then had the rate hearing would be June 27th and approve those 5 years of rates, we would still bring the budget back every year for an increase up to that amount. It doesn't mean that we're going to do that amount every year. It just means we have the authority to do it up to that amount without doing a Prop 218 notice.
Yeah, that makes sense because the reality is the way the real estate market is, we're not going to see major capital improvements for the next 5 years.
Yeah, well, we've had meetings with developers as recently as yesterday where they're talking to me.
Eternal optimist.
Well, we got to meet with them. Every now and then it comes
No,
through.
they're internal. They are
I'll tell you, Chief Mick Rounds of North Carolina Fire is pretty sure the guys over here at Campus Park West are ready to go ASAP, but that's been in the works since 1986. So
Yeah.
you tell me.
Well, both the projects at Vessel Seabreeze and over on whatever they call them this month, Bonsall Oaks, they're all both on hold and on the market to sell.
Well, we had a meeting with the Ocean Breeze
Ocean
folks
Breeze.
yesterday and they're bullish.
Oh, goody.
But that's small compared to
400
something.
homes.
Oh, wow. I mean,
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
They've got a big high density proportion on that.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
all in one point.
All right, so we're,
I,
yeah,
I do have a question with response to your suggestion of putting it on the tax roll. Is there any way we can collect data as to comparative analysis of what other agencies have done in that department or not?
Tracy.
I'll tell you,
Uh,
I'm on the fence right now relative
Okay.
to that. I understand our need and requirement to put it on the tax roll. It's beneficial to the district operations. But as a ratepayer, I'm not so certain I'd like to see it on my tax bill, It kind of defers it because you only see that tax bill twice a year.
Yeah, but if it's on the tax bill, you get a better write-off if it's a rental
Maybe,
property.
Technically.
If it's a rental
You'd have to
property.
consult your tax advisor on that. We're
Yeah.
not offering any tax advice in this district. I want to make sure whoever's listening.
And my concern there is, instead of being, let's say, $100 a month, it's now a $600 add-on to my tax bill.
Right.
Which, in this area is about a 4 or 5%, average.
I know
you
that-
can probably give me a better idea if you figure 2% of the.
On this list, a Liebenhain collects on the tax roll. Well, I used to work in
Okay.
Liebenhain. They
Well,
were
that's-
taxable. We did
that's- I
water on
just
the
like-
monthly month of that.
Well,
I'd like to
rates
see
on
more
that.
So,
information in that
a
area.
couple of the benefits I see to it is if this is a step one of maybe getting the water fixed fees on the tax roll as well. We have guaranteed collection when it's on the tax roll. And
That's all benefit for you, not.
It
benefit for the
is,
Invert
ratepayer.
rotate.
but
Tracy,
it's
you
also
have
a
to hit
benefit
that.
for the customers. If we're able to collect on all the customers that don't pay their bills, that benefits you customers that do pay your bills. It costs less if everybody pays their bills timely. We don't have to
You
send it to
gotta- You
collection.
gotta sell it and you gotta
Right.
figure out how.
Yeah, what's the
you-
administrative?
It's
cost of
inverse,
saying-
it's inverse and rotate. Put yourself in that
Yes.
position and ask the question, which would you rather have?
Well, there is a cohort of our customers that would rather just pay less, regardless of the benefit to the overall district. But I think this could be a benefit for everyone, and I can include that in my staff report.
It's not a hill we're gonna die on, but. it
No.
is
No,
an option.
no.
So we just wanna make sure-
And I understand that and I want to look at all the pros and cons associated with it. And That's why I'm asking the question.
For me, a big portion of it is the collection of it and then the administrative time that goes into collecting on accounts.
Well, but what's
So
that
we can
cost?
reduce staff as a result of
County
that?
does it for free.
Well, I know, no, but what's that reduction in
Right, right.
hours or
Right.
cost?
I really don't see it as a reduction until we can also get the water on there. This is kind of a step towards that goal. The significant reduction would be if we had the fixed water
it's-
fees on there as
It's
well.
rare that a customer pays their water bill, but not their sewer bill because they're on the same bill.
Bill,
And
yeah.
so
Yeah.
the collection
So-
happens
so
the same way.
The real benefit isn't going to come yet.
Well, I can imagine it might happen in a place where if you're renting and the property owner's paying the property taxes and that your monthly water, the total bill, because just water and wastewater will go down by $70 a month or whatever it is. And so maybe fewer people will default on that bill, which would reduce, but we don't know that for a fact.
Even when those go to foreclosure, the foreclosure companies pay those tax bills,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
unlike not getting paid while somebody's,
Oh, we put liens on them. That's why we lien properties so that when
Yeah.
that happens,
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we get paid whether the property owner pays the tax bill or not.
that's,
Right.
that's what I'm saying. Thank you.
We will do that. We'll make a pros and con list for you.
that'd be great.
If there's no other questions, we'll go on to water. We're good? Yep. So same thing with water. All the financial plan or financial assumptions are the same. The only thing I would really want to point out here is energy came up before the fiscal year 2023 budget, and this is way more impactful for water than it is for wastewater, already includes a 15% increase in energy costs. So we're taking that 15% increase, and then the following year, we're going to also increase it by 5% and then 5% thereafter. Okay. Purchase water, as you guys know, you get your water currently from San Diego County Water Authority. That accounts for 58% of your operating costs. So we always recommend with all of these studies that you guys do the pass-through provision. You already do that, and I'm just recommending that you maintain that approach moving forward. So when we issue our notices, we want to make sure that we state, hey, we're going to implement the pass-through provision, which means if and when those costs increase, you can pass them on to your customers.
yeah, and this is a number of agencies in the region don't, as Kathleen Hedberg's letter said, oh, water authority changes something different. Now we have to redo our 218. We don't have
to
that
do
issue
that. Yeah.
because we make sure to make it clear that this is an external cost. Those guys do it, it's coming down anyway. Because we can't predict if. what
Why
they're
aren't
gonna-
they subject to 218?
Water authority?
Yeah.
They're a wholesale
Better.
agency, so they aren't subject to 218. Well, I guess they are. There's 24 member agencies who vote in that boardroom. We're their only 24 customers, but it's a pretty lousy deal. I suggested maybe they should collect their cost on the tax bill, the last meeting, and then all the people can show up at their meeting.
Yeah.
Those to our meeting,
I liked it.
you know, get a line of people out the door at the water authority
But,
complaining
yeah.
about.
That,
tax
that,
bill.
that floated like a lead
Yeah, that's
balloon
fine.
too, right?
You know, though I'm sure water authority staff didn't like it, but the other board members around the room were like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about it,
You're honest.
if it wasn't, you know, everybody gets the Rainbow bill and they're mad at Rainbow because it came from Rainbow, but 60% of the costs
Yeah.
were not ours. Right.
Yeah.
And it's difficult because it limits our ability to do what we need to do
To do.
because it's their bill already went up in a big way and now we've got to make it worse. It's hard. And so if all those numbers disappeared, then everybody's bill goes down here and everybody feels much better. Now they open their
I
tax
think
bill.
it's a good
They're
idea.
upset, but it says San Diego County Water
Water
Authority. on
Authority.
it. And they're upset at San Diego. A win-win.
I like it.
I don't know if it's gonna go anywhere. Let's just say that.
They'd have to increase their fixed costs in order to do that, wouldn't they?
Well, their fixed costs, when your take or pay water contracts add up to like 93% of your expected demand, 93% of their water purchase costs are fixed. All your debt service is fixed. It's probably 95% of their total cost structure is fixed, but only 5% of their revenue is fixed. So, pretty bad math.
Unfortunately, it's not uncommon. It's a very common practice.
Oh, that's Dr. Hanneman.
So with water, it's a little bit more complex, obviously, than wastewater. And I'd be remiss if I didn't show you guys the water purchases. This is an acre feet of your guys' historical purchases moving into what we're moving forward into the 5-year plan.
And that's why they want to go back to a 10-year average,
Exactly.
because it would be double what our current forecast.
Your average. We're back here at fiscal 2014, where our.
Yeah, we were.
We're picking the high
based
numbers.
On this,
Yep.
not this.
Yeah.
That's not good.
And this is why.
Oh, it's the high of the last
High,
inch?
peak.
Yeah, not an average?
No, max.
Yeah.
You're peaking. It's like a peaking charge.
Figures
And
don't
then-
lie, but liars figure.
This is,
Peaking charge. It's like, what?
and as you can see here, you guys especially are greatly impacted by weather changes as well as changes in your customer class usage. So as you can see, clear back in 2009, you had a lot of ag usage, and you also had a very dry year. So you had a lot of purchases. In 2011, it had to have been a wet year. But the trend that you guys see, and I really want to make very clear, is that as your ag customers stop producing ag, your water usage is going to drop. And as like Tom mentioned earlier, your denominator is now lower, your costs are going to have to go up. So as you lose those ag customers, it naturally is going to progress to higher cost.
The rates go up.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So that,
Per unit.
yeah. So then I just want to also point out that right now, 63 to 67% of your water usage is ag, and they're only about 24% of your total customers. Like I said, a very small cohort is taking up a lot of your water usage, and
And
that's
there's
where
a very small percentage that's doing about 25% of our water use. There's some deeper dives.
there's-
into this.
yeah, it was kind of crazy. There was 1.1% of your accounts made up, like you said, 27% of your usage. It's scary.
We could probably name them.
Well, yeah, but it's difficult because it also makes rate modeling difficult because
It
they're
does.
so far out on the bell curve that how do you apportion cost this way? But it's also a gamble. If 1.1% of our people decide to stop farming or whatever it is they're doing,
Right.
then our demands go down
Yeah.
25%. Boom.
So, the question is county water authorities reported 14% increase the precipitating factor that will cause them to, the ratepayers in that category, to call it quits?
I got calls from two different people on that when they saw the news article last Sunday.
Yeah.
And both of them said that it might be the tipping point for them. It wasn't one of our 1%ers,
Yeah,
but you know,
Sitting on the
I think that's what we keep, the water authority thinks that population is going to increase their demands, but they don't realize that the cost drives so many people out of business in our areas that you could build 25% of our demand of several thousand acre feet. I don't know, you can build all the high rises you want. They're not going to be using 10,000 acre feet of water a year. And so I don't think they can see the forest for the trees. you know?
So what you're saying is our usage would drop down below roughly 10,000 acre feet a year if we lost our 1.5%.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that it's likely to assume this will go this way in the future. We don't know. It's a wet year this year. We have a low year. It might be a dry year next year. It'll kick back up, but I think we have to plan for that eventuality. The cost of those people, the 60% from the weather authority who's driving them the most. We immunize ourselves to some extent by having 30% of our revenues fixed, but the math is problematic going forward. I mean, getting the cheaper supply of water is the only way for us to reduce or at least hold the line for the folks that are out there. And if we stay anchored to the water authority, we'll be selling 8,000 acre feet of water in 5 or 10 years. I mean, that's why we're trying to get out so that we can at least stop the bleeding.
So on that negative note, Tom, thank you.
Sorry. Just trying
So-
to talk facts here.
yeah. So I guess what that brings up as far as,
I'm good man.
Yeah, there's the math right there.
Like,
so,
well, if I was at the water authority, I'd say, forget all that. It's gonna go like this,
Right.
right? It's a
Yeah.
hockey stick. And they've been doing that.
Ain't happening.
Maybe in your area, but not this area. What you're creating is a rural blight.
Well, and you can see in this period, over the Pamsi, 1,200 units, houses come in. Well, that didn't tip the scales.
so Tom picked the number, 8,000 acre feet or whatever it was. I think
Okay.
we need a real worst case scenario
Yeah.
to be included as part of our strategic
Good
plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Strategic
Okay.
planning process.
Yeah.
Yeah, because North County, this whole area, this region is changing
Oh.
dramatically.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a rural area anymore, and our roads and our infrastructure is showing the dramatic increase in wear and tear.
Oh,
And
that's
our
all right.
plan that-
Mileage tax will fix that.
Our plan that
Everybody
Andrea is
moved back to
gonna,
the city.
High speed rail.
Andrea is gonna take us through the rest of the plan, but what we're doing is trying to do an incremental steps so that when that happens, it doesn't just all fall on the single family residential. We want to increase the fixed fees incrementally.
Yeah.
We couldn't do
That's-
it as much as I wanted to. We went over this again yesterday, but it'd be too much of a shock for them, but we're going to be doing it in steps.
Yeah.
And that's why we're going to show you the model so you can
Yes.
see that impact.
Yeah.
It's very well impactful. So
And I
we
think our
want to
new
see that.
Communications person needs to help people understand that
Mhm.
the cost of having water pipe to your house is not necessarily related to how much you use.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
the cost of having that pipe connected to your house and having it available 24/7.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
So obviously for you guys, a huge portion of it is going to be your demand and deciding what we're going to use for that figure. Besides that, we want to obviously make sure that we account for any reserves. This is very standard. Your operating, we would like to target it between 60 days and 90 days of operating. We want you to be between that bandwidth. For the capital, we want 1 year of your 5-year average CIP, and this is forward looking. So if you recall that CIP plan that we showed you, we're going to take that CIP plan, we're going to average it out, and the very minimum that we want you to be at is 1 year of that. And then we want you to be somewhere between 1 year and 2 years so that as those capital projects come online, you're able to get them started, get them kicked off. You don't have to wait for funding. So that's the goal. Go ahead. You have a question?
I was just curious as whether the mandates were best practices or whether they were regulated.
They're just best practices.
Okay.
And then rate stabilization, this one, not every agency has a rate stabilization reserve. For you guys, strongly recommended because you guys are so variable and so much volatility. So that's pegged at between 5% and 10%. Again, you want to be between that bandwidth, ideally, so that when you have a wet year, hopefully if it's just 1 year, that rate stabilization reserve can make up that difference and it won't be as impactful to your rates in any one given year. New water resource, that's just, I believe you guys fund that through readiness to serve or some kind of property taxes.
200,000 a year goes in there.
So we don't include that as part of your target. It's just something that you guys do policy wise. And then liability sub insurance, we just keep that at the 100K. And has that gone up recently? No?
No.
Okay. So in terms of dollars in 2024, ideally you'd be between 17.2 million and 30.8. That's what those all mean in terms of dollars. Because it's nice to talk in theory about those targets, but again, it would be between that bandwidth is where you'd want to be. And again, that's just based off of best practices. Where are you at today? If you do not do any adjustments, or these are just the rates that are in effect right now today, you can see that for 3 years, you have net positive cash flow. This is as expected. You guys had recently done a study. You're pretty close to being on target with where you would want to be. It does not include any capital funding for, that's going to come out of your reserves. So let's look at that. This is the capital improvement program. This does include those wholesale efficiency projects. 9.7 million of that was funded through loans. Okay, and that's what I'm showing in that light purple color. So that's not going to be as impacted by rates. The total for the 5-year planning period is about 33.6 million. It's really important to note that these costs are higher than what we had in the last plan. We all know that you had supply stuff come along, the inflationary factors, costs just increased pretty substantially. So this is a big driver for why we're needing rate increases. Okay. Again, if we don't make any rate adjustments, ending reserve balances after you fund your capital, you would deplete them by fiscal year 2026. We want to solve that. And to do so, we need 8% revenue adjustments each year of the planning period. And if you think about it, that's really just tacking on pretty much where we're at with inflation. Inflation this last year was about 7.3%, and you're looking at 8%. So you're just catching back up to those increased costs. Okay. What this will allow us to do is you'll have net positive cash flow each year. You'll sufficiently fund your capital plan and needs, and then we'll reestablish those healthy reserves. We'll build them up over the course of the 5 years. We're not trying to do it in year one. We're trying to do a steady approach. Okay. Any questions? Typically what we do for a cost of service study is we look at your existing rates and see, hey, what's working, what's not working. An ongoing issue with Rainbow is the revenue stability, right? As those water demand changes, your guys' revenues fluctuate. We look at rate objectives. What are we trying to achieve with any of the new rates that we're coming up with? I think our goal still should be that revenue stability. Unfortunately, we also have to look at affordability. We have to look at, is it palatable? Can we do that kind of adjustment? Rate alternatives during the study, we're not looking at significant rate alternatives. We did some exploring, and Tom might want to jump in here, of trying to move away from meter sizes to a demand type approach. But again, because your ag is so much of your usage, it's just going to shift cost to ag.
Yeah, I came up with some different mathematical methodologies that could do this, but after walking through the viability of that in respect to Prop 218 challenges, they were felt to be too risky. And if we're going to try that, we should be prepared to maybe find ourselves in a rate case, because there's the cottage industry of lawyers, as we experienced and successfully got out of one.
Yeah.
It's difficult if you start straying from the norm by an amount. And if the one thing is, as we looked at the data, where we're looking at this concentration of demand in small numbers of people, if we disrupt that, it makes it very bad for everyone else, because all the costs those people are picking up now get shifted over, and the cost per unit goes way up for everybody else. And so we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater here. I wish the legislature, I don't know how many bills Meg said they did, would grant us more discretion in how we can establish rates without being subject to whatever bozo lawyer wants to come, make a fuss. But unfortunately, that's where we're at. Mathematically, this is easy, but
Right.
legally and politically, it can be more difficult. I know Flint's not happy about that, because we've been trying for this holy grail for a long time, and we had something that could work, but it would be found to be too arbitrary and we would likely lose. At least that's the advice we've been given.
Under the current laws.
Under the way the laws. It's in the Constitution. There's a proposition.
So it's probably good to just let it ride basically how you guys are now with a few minor tweaks. And then maybe when you guys disconnect, you revisit it. When those costs are significantly different, then you can make some of those bigger shifts. But right now, you're going to see it'd be pretty tough. Then the final step is strategic. So this really comes down to policy decisions. This is where you guys are going to get to give a little bit of feedback here. We're really looking at this mostly on your fixed variable revenue recovery. As Tom has stated, I think in the last study, you're around 35%. Right now, because of water usage, you're at 37, almost 38% fixed revenue recovery. Ideally, we would shift that up to closer to 40 or even higher, but I think 40 is going to be about your guys' limit. So those are my rate considerations. A significant portion of any utilities costs are fixed. Usually it's around 80% or more. However, it's very difficult to recover all the fixed costs on a fixed rate. Again, it drastically affects affordability. You're going to see that the people that are most impacted by that kind of shift is going to be your single family and usually your lower or smaller meter sizes or lower water usage. The district's water fixed cost recovery, as I stated, is around 37%. This is where we will play around with it a little bit in the model. And ideally, my recommendation would be to get up at least to 40%, which is what I'm seeing in all of the agencies that I'm working with. They're 40% or higher right now.
Not the water authority.
Not the water authority. I don't work for the water authority. I have an agency right now.
They're a wholesaler, not a retailer.
Correct. I'm working with an agency right now that's trying to get up to 59% fixed recovery. But if they do that, they're putting it on the property tax roll. So with that, can you help me switch over to the others? So we're going to jump into the model so you guys can see what that really means. How much? Maybe. So it's a lot of numbers. Right now, this is, you should recognize some of these charts, right? They were in the PowerPoint presentation. This would be ending with the 8% adjustments, which is what I have here. I'm going to show you, hopefully everything's working. Without a revenue adjustment. Give me one more second. We're gonna go to rate design. I'm gonna go back to basically where you guys are at right now, as close as I can get it. I'm gonna make this a little bit smaller.
Easier to read that way.
Oh,
Smaller numbers mean less revenue, right?
She's got better eyes than us.
these are all your rate component buckets. So this is where we do our rate design and figure out how to justify your cost of service.
This is where it decides if it's going to be fixed or variable.
Correct. Let me make sure I have it correct, and that's down here at the bottom. Okay, so right here, the key thing to note, I'll make it bigger, is that the white right here, this is your existing fixed revenue recovery. And now based on cost of service, we're at 38%. So this is as close as I can get it to where you guys are at right now. And again, this is with no revenue adjustment. We're going to build up to it. So what does that mean in terms of rates? Oh, Lord, that's kind of small, huh? Can you guys see that okay?
Yeah, we got the
Yep.
TV behind us too.
Okay, so all your components come together. This would be the new proposed rates under the scenario. Again, this is no revenue adjustments. And this is where you guys are at right now. This is your single family, multifamily, commercial, institutional customers. You can see very minor changes. And again, it's just based off of how costs have just shifted a little bit. This is your ag customers. I don't know if you guys remember or know, but we did take part of ag's delivery last time and we shifted it to a fixed component, which is what you're seeing here. We're maintaining that same approach. We did that to help you guys with revenue stability. We want to make sure that, you know, for those customers that are being the most impactful, they're going to get it more on a fixed charge as opposed to in their delivery unit rate.
And just, and just so maybe so Patty knows that, for a large water user, the fixed charge is a very much smaller component. If you have $100 bill, an ag guy, it might be 20%. If the people who, you know, would only use $30 of water, that $20 is 2/3 of it. So they're able to handle the higher fixed charge without it impacting their overall bill as much, but it provides more revenue stability for us, for those users whose use does change year to year.
And then it
As
helps
opposed-
them because they can plan a little bit better instead of having these bills that vary as much as they otherwise would. By putting it on a fixed charge, those ag users have a better sense of how much they're going to be billed. Okay. Then maybe it's thinking, I guess. Ooh. Then PSAR, these are customers that don't pay for emergency storage or supply reliability. That's from San Diego County Water Authority. So because of that, their rates are a little bit less if you were to compare ag, right? 119 versus 104. And that's again, just because they strictly do not get those costs, and that's from the authority, not from us. So you can see, like I said, just minor changes on the variable side. If I scroll down a little bit, you're going to have to. These are your customer classes, the proposed rates, and then the change. But what does that really mean, right? Because every customer and every bill has, every single bill will have different usage amounts in there. What we do is we run it through the consumption analysis. And this is what we want to show. So with no revenue adjustment, you're looking, and this makes sense, that most of your customers in single family are going to be, you know, less than a 5% impact. It's just cost of service, a little bit of changing going on. You look at your ag customers. Sorry, I have to scroll over. You know, they're much the same. You have a few people out in the outliers here. Okay, but now let's see the impact of just adding the 8%. So if I come up here and say, okay, but that's not what we need in terms of revenue. We need, oh my Lord. Much easier on a bigger screen. So you do the 8. Well, I mean, for me to be able to
Jeez.
see more, how about that? What I mean is like this.
She meant she needed 2 monitors and 2 screens.
I do, and I have it at home. So you have your single family. So again, now we've added the 8%, and as you would expect, just keeping everything as in line as we can, it's going to shift into that, so that most of them are going to be in that same category.
So I don't know if you guys can read it, that
Oh,
The
here.
bottom, the far left one is this graph is less than 5% total bill impact.
Yeah,
As far as 5 to 10.
10%, yeah.
15%.
and we just shifted with an 8% increase. We just shifted it from the 5% range to the
Correct.
to
So basically
10%.
Zero, there was no impact on the other ones. They were all, that, when she had the other one, that last value was zero. But you'll see the vast majority of people will have between a 5 and a 10% impact.
Ooh,
And that's,
32%.
I was gonna say, that's true of single family.
Yeah.
But now when we get to ag, and again, these are your really big users. These are, sometimes they have bigger meter sizes, but not always. We've seen that a lot in your data where
Sure.
meter size seems to be a
But
pretty
next
big
you're
issue.
going to show us that step to moving more of the rate to the fixed component and what that does to these graphs.
So we wouldn't stop here, right? We wouldn't just do an 8%, keep it the exact same as it was and not think about it. But what we do want to do, at least what I would recommend doing, is shifting a little bit more to the fixed side. Okay. So what we do, and I'm going to do it in 2 increments here. I'm going to move, can't really see it, but this line item is your debt. And I'm going to say, justifiably so, that all of your debt should be recovered on the fixed charge. Okay, as opposed to splitting it. In that last scenario, we had split it 50-50 between fixed and variable. I don't know where this went. I gotta fix it. There we go. So if I just split debt, we're at the 42% that I would recommend. Okay, so all we've done is we've moved all of your debt to be covered on a fixed charge. That way it's very, very stable. It's a fixed cost, right? Debt isn't going to change every year. It's not going to go down as usage goes down. It's something that's known today. You have a schedule for it. So now, I don't know if you could see it happen, but it's shifted a little bit of cost or a little bit of their impacts over to the left on SAR and commercial and ag. Let me keep on going. But by doing so, you're going to have the opposite impact for single family. So now their impacts have shifted to the right. As you move more costs to the fixed, you're going to see more of the customers appearing over here. Okay. There's one more step I would like to consider.
And that's that incremental move to shifting some of that cost from ag to single family. Whereas if we don't do this now in steps, it's going to be a cliff they go off of when all the ag is done. It's hard.
And
there's-
all these scenarios, you've got more than a third of your customer base in the 10 to 15% or higher rate increase.
Yeah.
Single family. Mhm. I'm going to do one more change here, and this is just going to create, I won't go all the way because I know it's not going to be palatable. We're just going to take your customer service cost and I'm going to shift them from a meter capacity to a account services, which means that it's equally for all customers, regardless of how much water they use or what size meter they have. And the idea behind that, it's very justifiable, is that everybody has the ability to call in and get help. Everybody gets a bill. So this way, like I said, it doesn't matter if you use
2-inch line or one.
right, it doesn't matter. It's everybody has that service. So it's definitely justifiable to have account services. There is some flexibility here. I have here, I don't know if you can see the gray. I guess technically you could put, finance and human resources on an account services situation too, because they support those roles. I'm not going to do it because again, the impact would be pretty bad. So by doing that, you'll see that again, we shift a little bit more of your customers are going to fall into this higher impact. And this is an annual impact.
More than half your customers in single
Mhm.
family.
And then if you go over to ag, and again, as the balancing act here is as your ag customers fall off, that's going to happen anyways. It's just going to be much more impactful and it's going to be all at once. So I kind of go to the far extreme. This is like the absolute extreme. So these are some options. And again,
Subtle difference between 38 and 42% can have a distorted impact.
mhm,
Obviously, that table where you saw the customer service,
Percentages.
all the stuff, percentages can be moved one way or the other, but it really comes down to that the ag folks pay more on the volumetric side and fixed charges lower their thing. I guess, and maybe it's just, I haven't asked this question, what if the variable rate on the ag went up a little higher? Would that then reduce the rev rec for the need on the SFRs, or is that?
No, because what we do is we allocate to customer class first, and whatever cost or to that customer class stays there. So all you're doing is shifting how ag recovers their proportionate share.
Mm.
So
And
we
wouldn't
can't
that make the future problem worse for when those ag customers go away? It'd make it worse for the district.
Everyone else. Well, that's the hard part,
Yeah.
is that you've got the challenge between a growing population of single family homes and the legacy ag thing here, that it's such a difficult, balancing act to come up with one to say, wow, I found a sweet spot. Normally, I've done this thing in the past for my career. We can always find a sweet spot that you can try to meld everything out. We've been having a hard time getting this one to balance out in a way that would meet everyone's needs exactly.
Tom, do you see any significant change in the 2020 zoning plan?
As far as increased development, Seabury, I don't see any increase in, they talk about it, big, oh, we need more development near transit, but around here, you talk to any of the developers, they're just pulling their hair out. 'Cause they can't-
It takes about 3 years to get one single family lot through the
Yeah.
county planning.
And so
And the base cost on per house is over 450,000.
this is why, this agency has been focused on reducing our input costs in a
Right.
big way. And then also trying to, find different ways of getting funds into the different grant programs, things like that. Those things take time to get done, as we know, but as it is now, this is a challenge.
It would seem to me that we need to shift to our fixed costs, whatever is appropriate. Is that the best way to state it?
And
Whatever.
that's where we have a little bit, like I said, we have a little bit of flexibility. That's where rate design comes. And that's where your policy or strategic objectives really play a role in helping guide me, is to, once you guys give me your direction, say, hey, I want to see a 42%, fixed recovery. I can come up with the options and show you, but that's why I brought up the model, was because I need you guys to understand how sensitive it is and how impactful it can be. Like, we can talk about it and come up with a great idea, but when you implement it, it's tough. And then, when we get to messaging, when you guys, if you guys are having communications come on board, all I did here was give you an example of how much of your rates are Rainbow's portion, which is the top, and how much is San Diego County Water Authority. So I think it's important to know.
Oh, my God.
So,
Push that one.
so like I said, I broke it out to help you guys see, how much is really truly your guys's. And again, we say, hey, how much is it going to impact customers? Well, it depends on how much usage they have, right? It depends on what meter size they have. Is
Right,
it the
you
correct
take
meter
that-
size?
The water authority share, and if we can cut that by a third by getting it from Eastern, which is,
Right.
of course, that number is going up, as the water authority costs go up, then rates come down, but it also frees us up to be able to do the capital work that needs to be done here
Right.
and even keep the rates the same. But it's a heavy anchor to carry around.
Is
I
it
have two
possible-
questions.
Go ahead.
Sorry, no, you go ahead.
Okay. Is it possible to be able to put another column that shows what the breakout the money that would be available if we're at Eastern
Eastern.
Municipal?
In our 218 notice last time, we used the comparison of what rates would
Oh.
increases,
But that-
water authority increases Eastern.
Yeah.
But that was based on a 5%, not a 14%.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Right.
that's, we only go with what they
But
tell us.
I guess I'm asking, do you have the capability in your model right now to look at Eastern?
No, I do not have that capability right now.
Not in
and
this
it's-
model.
And it's tough because
That was my question.
You don't-
too. Can you run a detachment scenario?
Well, we don't know
and-
what the exit fee is.
and that's the kicker right there, is I can make these
Treat the exit
assumptions,
fee-
but without
sure.
the exit fee,
I mean,
I-
if nothing else, treat the exit fee as zero, and what would it be if this was business as usual under Eastern's pricing structure?
my fear with that approach would be that you're messaging your customers that it's going to be that level. And then when it happens,
No,
if it
I'm not
doesn't, then
messaging. I'm trying to
Okay, just for you
understand
guys
because then we
internally.
can add the exit fee component in once we know what that is.
Exactly.
But just
Thank you.
like pass through.
You know, I just,
Yeah, you can do that.
Huh?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to see that too.
in it would be nice to say, this is what it would be with no exit fee and here's the exit fee. So go talk to the guys at LAFCO about County Water Authority regulations, you know.
Have to see.
So
Anyway, it's just a what if scenario. I mean,
Well, we've done some of those things before. I don't know that we'll.
Yeah.
I don't know that we're gonna build a full rate model, but we
Yeah.
can at least estimate those sorts of cost
cost
impacts.
thing.
and then Tom, real quick,
And
just
with the escalation in water authority cost. I mean, this
Oh, yeah.
this is built around a 5%, right? Scenario of water authority costs.
this is holding purchase water costs wherever they are right now today.
So-
Any
oh,
pass through is going to
oh,
be
oh,
an above.
Oh, yeah. That number, that bottom bar gets.
That's
bigger.
just today. This was just as if rates go into effect
So-
in July.
So it's actually worse than that when we
Mm.
figure in
It's
inflation.
worse than that.
It will be.
Starting at-
So every January, you're gonna have a pass through component and it's gonna increase the fixed and the variable side.
Yeah, as long as their rate increases are outpacing ours, that their bar gets bigger, so.
And then Tom, real quick, if you look at that chart real quick, you asked the question, hey, if we don't go so much on, and I don't think you're gonna want to, but I'll show you what it looks like real quick. If we don't shift as much to their fixed charge on ag, I'm just gonna do like 25% instead. Watch what happens.
Well, I didn't say in lieu of, I said in addition to.
Too.
Oh, yeah, can't do in addition to, but we can switch it.
Why not? Is that a?
And I'm a little concerned that we're looking at the impact on PSAR so much when we look at the number of our customers that have opted for the PSAR thing, they basically said,
Yeah, we should look
Numerically,
at ag.
Volumetrically.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
guys shifted a lot to this category here, this agricultural with
Right.
residents.
A lot, that's become one of our largest.
I was surprised how many shifted, but
well, all you have to do is go talk to a grower and say, you know, that's the response you get when they look at PSAR and versus the ability to make sure their crop doesn't die.
Right.
I
And
mean,
the
that's
regulatory
Mike Milano's
environment.
response.
Well, the flower guys are in a different spot than the avocado guys.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll make a comment and so are the horse people. Because when I got here, I was on a TSAR rate. And as soon as I figured out what was going on, I couldn't be on it. I came and switched it immediately.
We only had the call once in the last 10 years. Or 15 years, 2011. And then 2016.
so
But that's okay.
So
The
I
rest
guess,
of the
I don't know how much
participants.
more you have on here, but what Andrea needs today, and we, and I apologize for taking so much time here, but we wanted to dig in and make sure everybody understands. And here's all the math, the kind of the constraints we find ourselves in. And if there's any particular policy directions you want to go, if you say, hey, let's not increase our fixed revenue recovery, then we can produce a rate structure that looks like that. But when we look at that demand chart that she had before, we're vulnerable to revenue instability if we remain in low fixed charge mode. And at some point, it's gonna happen. And I think a stair step approach over time, for the next 10 years, to get to that spot is gonna be it's not a great choice. People ain't gonna be happy about it, but financially, with the headwinds we have and the denominator problem we have.
It's got to be done.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it'd be irresponsible not to, but it would be super risky and with some fairly clearly predictable consequences. Unfortunate consequences.
So
And I guess at a certain point out here in the country, it's just gonna, if you want really cheap water, go live in a 5-story walk up on India Street in San Diego.
There you go.
It's
Well,
gonna
I
do what it
think
is.
based upon when you came in, I mean, the amount of capital improvement projects that we've made to our whole system have been dramatic and a huge improvement,
We,
a good use of.
prior to him
money.
coming in, we deferred capital improvement projects in order to keep the rates. as-
Well, yeah, we can certainly do
Right.
that. That's
But-
another option. This is-
no,
but I
that's
just
not a good
say-
option. We don't recommend that, Tom.
We don't-
I know, I didn't either, but
Hey,
it's been, it was.
we know we're looking at 50-year-old plus piping.
I was
It's
gonna
not
say,
an
we don't wanna
option.
go backwards.
Yeah, so CIP is where a lot of agencies balance their budgets. They say, yeah, let's kick it out, let's kick it. out.
Mhm.
And this agency, well, I remember every year we budgeted and never spent it.
And again, this,
the-
this
the
assumes
minimum-
no development funds. And I want to add that we've been reaching out to public relations firms to help us with the messaging on this and the Prop 218 notice. I think that's going to be a really important component, is getting this message out to the customers.
And the communications committee will be deeply involved in sculpting that message. So.
So with that, I just,
Question for you guys. I don't know, what more specific input do you need?
the only thing I'm really wanting from my end is I feel that 42% fixed recovery is about the highest you're going to be able to go this step. If you guys feel differently, I can show you an option with more, but keep in mind your single family already is being so significantly impacted. that I don't think it's going to be palatable. I think that's probably your bookend. And then I can go to where you guys are at right now, which is about 37. I wouldn't go any lower than that. You could, but I don't think it's a very wise decision
It
to
ain't
do
gonna
so.
get easier to do in the future.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a fiduciary responsibility to do what's appropriate,
Mhm.
knowing what's in front of us.
Yeah.
And not overdo it and not underdo it.
Do it.
Yeah.
Well, if we want to add a hockey stick on the end of this chart and use that, boy, that denominator problem goes away, but that's,
That's called kicking
That's-
the can down the road.
that's,
That's saying we want to become a county water authority.
well, they're gonna find, yeah, it's gonna hit all at once. It was, even last year, they were forecasting 6%, now it's 14.
Yeah.
Oh, well, denominator change. Well, yeah, I'm telling you, for 10 years, that denominator changed.
Yeah.
But if you guys give me direction on that fixed recovery, then I can come back next time and maybe not have to go into the model.
Well, I think that once we get to that thing settled, then she can play with some of the other parameters to try to mitigate
Yeah.
impacts and spread things a little
A
different.
little bit differently.
And we're currently at 37. Your
Yeah.
recommendation is go to 42. If we're talking about 5 or 6 years out, are you recommending that we're actually going to push that more toward 50 or 60?
I would have to see what your usage is at that point. So when you do your next cost of service study, right, I can't go from, it might drop. No, in seriousness, it might drop, right? If you're gonna,
I think there's gonna
Well,
come
you-
a point.
You don't know what the mix of
Well-
the customer base is.
right.
Well, let's,
Yeah.
let's vision out a
Go
little
for it.
further.
Yeah.
Right now, we're dominated by the agricultural users and a handful are
Yeah.
using a huge amount. Those handful end up, I don't know if they're, I haven't looked at each one, but they're probably avocado, but some might be nurseries, like.
Some
the big ones up
tomatoes
here,
over in
Some
the
tomatoes.
Laurel Hills area.
But as long as those guys keep in business, that's fine. If they go out, then as our consumption patterns shift more toward the single family residential,
Mhm.
and we go from 65% ag to 45% ag to 35% ag, then the variability is going
Gonna
to stay.
drastically change. Mhm.
And then the driver for the fixed charges changes, right? Now, we're only selling 8,000 acre feet of water a year, but it's, it's all our situation has such a range of highs and lows. That it's almost impossible to build a perfect rate model that every single person can be managed fairly under the law. Now, we could do it mathematically if Prop 218 didn't exist, and there wasn't lawyers out there, but within the constraints we have, it's very difficult.
Is there a way to look at this from the perspective of we're assuming no changes right now and moving it up, and that we know that puts a certain percentage of our 1.5% at risk. What if we ran the model with a 50% loss or of that 1.5% or a 25% loss of the 1. In other words, factor in the fact that we're going to do this and it's going to make this go away. So how do we smooth the curve of that transition?
Right, so she can add these in to show lower years.
So
And-
that's kind of what we're trying to do with bringing it up to the 42% is smoothing that.
Because if we don't, then the loss of sales increases our revenue even more.
Right.
So the stair-step up fixed charges is a bulwark against, bulkhead against the risk of declining sales in the future.
So
If
what,
sales go up, you're like, oh, wow, cool.
Yeah.
But
yeah, so what if so we're saying on the Prop 218, so let's just take my little brain and wrap it around and say, okay, our first rate increase is going to be at the 40%, not 42 or 38.
Mhm.
Then where does that put us? And then do we revisit it again in 3, 5, 6 years? I mean, I need some help.
Oh, yeah,
with
yeah.
that.
You have to revisit it. The max we. can
Right,
do under
if
218 is
sales
5 years.
stayed at, I think we have 12.7 in here, then that 42 would stay pretty stable as long as our different cohorts didn't change their behavior. It would stay pretty close to that for the 5 years because we're doing the same amount of rate increase each year for the 5 years. Now, hopefully we don't have another, 10, 15% inflationary year and have to come back in the middle of the 5 years and redo it all. Yeah, that 42%, if we set it now, it could stay the same throughout the 5 years.
But the fixed and the percentage of your total revenue that's fixed changes
Right.
every fiscal year, depending on how much.
Based off of
water you
usage.
sell.
Right,
So
right.
Yeah, it'll
Get
change
that.
a
It's a
little
damn
bit.
denominator again.
Yeah, no, I
We'll,
get
we'll
that
look
part.
at it every year with the budget process. It's something that
Right.
we always break out and look at where we're at on it.
But Tracy has a model where she can do that. She can go in here and cut reduction, but you can't really see it, but it's by customer class. If I move this over,
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Right.
I can look at that.
Right.
I can look and see what it looks
What
like
the
if we drop
sensitivity
8,000.
and then see what it means in terms of ending reserves and resolve it. And as long as she's got the consumption file open too, it will even show you bill
But if you
impact.
notice on the column we're running on with that 12.7 is already showing significant reductions in a lot of these categories because
Yeah,
we're
we-
trying to be conservative.
Right.
We put the reduction in ag.
Mostly in ag. Yeah, we
Yeah.
put, let me back these back out.
Yeah, it's gonna be your smaller ag users.
Yeah. So. They all add up.
Well, it used to
All those
be,
Big boys would be a problem. too.
It'd
Well,
be a
yeah.
problem too. And if they can't increase their revenue, they're going to either have to cut back their operations or, shut
a
it.
lot more
down.
dead trees.
I guess I'd like to know that 1% or whatever it is, what's their total by water? What's the total?
25%.
Yeah.
It's almost 30% of our total variable
It's crazy.
and it's less than 100
Well-
customers.
Well, okay, that's percentage. What I'm talking about is absolute acre feet that we would
Oh,
lose.
acre feet?
That's what I want to know.
One
have
second.
that.
Yeah.
So much data.
13.5.
I don't know if you have.
So
We have it. in
this was a
something.
3-year average. So again, as their usage patterns change, it's gonna change.
Yeah.
But that 27% of usage was 1.7 million HCF. And it-
Pass math in Excel, so I don't have to punch it out on my.
What are you guys trying to do?
Acre feet.
It is acre, 1.7 acre.
Yeah, acre feet,
There she's got it.
Oh,
4,000.
billing unit.
4,000.
8,000.
And our burn last year was
Less than 100
14,
customers.
Well, we're tracking on 13.5 right now.
13.5. 13.5.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
We're hoping to get 13.5.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're projecting it oh, see, now I'm the blind one. I'm like, I can't see that.
Mhm.
13.8. Oh,
Depends
man.
upon the summer weather.
Yeah. Well,
That's the
Oh, that's-
purchases
yeah.
versus
purchases,
sales.
Sales.
Yeah.
So,
What depends on the next 4 months.
It's probably not gonna be
What the
quite.
weather is
Yeah,
the
we
next
don't
4
know.
months. Whether we even make 13.5
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if it ever stops raining, tonight it's supposed to come in and rain tomorrow.
tomorrow. Yeah.
But only a half inch this time, darn it.
But it just keeps the sprinklers off for
That's
another week or more.
another week.
Yeah, but if we go into a really, really 100-degree weather like we did last year.
The last 3 months,
Consistency.
the last 3 months of the
Yeah.
quarter.
Longer
I do.
yes, but boy, oh boy.
Director Gasca, that might be a good messaging to look at what the rates would be if we did drop to that 8,000 feet and have it be part of, this,
Yeah.
this is where we're headed.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a difficult thing for especially the single family homes class who worry that even though they're not subsidizing anyone as part of this rate model, but those people are paying their fair share. Because we only have one source of cost of water. We have very few tools to appropriate allocate water costs. The fact that ag's in business is keeping, if ag was all gone, everybody's
Well,
bill would be double or triple what it is right
Well,
I think that's the point.
the number of
Yeah.
people
Because-
employed
So we
would go
can use
down.
on the
as well.
messaging.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I'll include that.
Stop trying to
Whoa.
cancel. We gotta go back. I gotta do it manually, you guys.
Well, this is the challenge of live Excel work.
Yeah.
Very
Drives me
big
crazy.
spreadsheet with a lot of.
Big model.
actions, a Big model.
We don't have to.
No. I'll do it offline.
All right, Tracy, Andrew, you guys.
We're done.
what You need?
I'm
I think
good.
so.
All right.
So we'll be coming back to the board April
Next month.
25th with this hard decision. And asking for action on the rate increase.
Okay,
But for right now, I'm gonna stick with roughly the 42 fixed revenue recovery as an option.
Yeah.
And maybe existing. Does that sound good?
That's me. I'm not on the board.
No,
go
but
higher.
what proof do we have?
Yeah,
From all the board members.
yeah.
I like it. So even though, so here's my question. If we say it's, what did you say, 38, 30, what is the
Yeah, we're
bottom?
basically
37,
about 37, 38,
37 to 42. We don't have to have
the
to
bookend.
take it. Is that not correct?
Right, you don't
Correct.
have to do anything.
No, wait. What I'm trying to say is we have a range, but we don't have to increase it to that immediately. We can do it incrementally.
Well,
How does that work?
The consultant's recommendation is 42. We could.
I
choose-
understood that, Hayden. That was not my question.
Yeah, but we could choose to do anything in between there.
Well, I think
or
we're-
above it.
there's a couple
That's
different questions
fine.
here. One, when you're
Thank you.
talking about, on the Prop 218 notice, they give you a total increase of costs that we can have. The ratio of fixed to variable is more fungible, and I don't know that it is subject to 218 is the total bill. And
So this is more like how we're gonna
How-
allocate the revenue increase.
Right.
So
So I'm not sure
Where
we
we
can
want to
we
land.
can
Not getting my
incrementally
question
do that.
but the
correct.
board,
Director Moss.
when we take the action in June, it's going to approve the current, whatever the rates are going to go into effect starting July 1, right?
Correct.
And so, but then the subsequent years, those can be adjusted up to the limits you set in the Prop 218 notice. So whatever rate comes across for your consideration will include the approval of the year one rates, which will go into effect right after that.
Plus, and it's going.
Plus the forecast of what they're going to be in the future years, at which point you'll have input each budget cycle to, say,
So
hey,
in the
we can.
218, we can improve 37 to 42, but we can decide to go to only 40 next year. Is that?
But
what I'm
Yeah,
that's
hearing?
that's not what you'll see on the Prop 218. You'll
Correct.
That's why I'm asking the
Yeah,
question. I
That's
wanna
just an
understand.
internal rate design question. to
We're,
say,
we're
how do we wanna
determining
do
how
this?
we're gonna design this rate model. So that 40 versus 42%, that stays. What we can decide is up to that 8% each year of the revenue requirement.
Because
Got it.
how,
Okay, now I'm
in
with you.
each
then. Thank
revenue requirement, how you allocate it into the different
Yeah,
buckets.
Got it.
We
I-
can't
and
change
different
how we
impacts.
allocate it
So what we
every
want to
year.
communicate to customers is, here's example bill impacts. Those bill impact charts are the number one thing that we've got to help
Present.
people understand what their bill is, because sometimes a
so-
14% rate increase only means a 5% bill impact, and
Yeah.
for us, it's.
Right. No, I get that. I've been explaining that to the HOAs in my area consistently. Please
Right.
look at your bill, look at your
Look at the
fixed
bill. You gotta
charges,
look at
look
bill
your
impact.
pass-through charges.
We've had people, I remember it was Rick Carey who came in here when we increased the
Yeah,
fixed
Rick.
charge. You said,
Yep.
we did a 70% increase in his fixed charge. We first did that, but we lowered the volumetric rate, and the total impact to his bill over a 2-year span was 3%.
Yeah.
And I said,
No,
Rick,
I-
this is below the inflation rate. And,
Right.
but he just focused on one component.
Component.
But the component for us, I think, is important based on the charts showing our historical demands and the variability that, and with a graph like that, and Andrea's right, for an agency like ours, having a larger percentage of fixed revenue is important to revenue stability.
Yeah, I think that part of it, that the fixed, I would like to see more of it moved into the fixed charge, which, because we have those fixed costs.
Right.
Because we don't, as we have both experienced both on this committee and budget finance, we've had like a roller coaster.
There it is.
And
Yep.
so
Yep.
that's, that's my never to be humble opinion. I'd like to see heavier fixed.
So to restate everything that was just said, what you're going to come back and propose in April is a percentage increase for the 218, whether it's 8%
Correct.
or 10% or whatever
A 5-year
for a
Amount.
5-year.
up to 8% every year for
Year.
the 5 years. Then every year when we do the budget, we'll determine how much of that we need.
And
That's what I
then,
wanted to
right,
hear. Thank you.
and what you're asking underneath that is how we allocate that 8% into
Correct.
fixed and variable costs.
And,
And all of our.
and
Because
does,
that
and
piece will stay the same throughout the 5 years.
wait.
Got it. That's what I'm.
So if
It
it
will
was,
change?
It will,
Yes.
the
It has-
42 versus 40 will
Okay.
stay the same because that's
We
part
can't
of the
adjust
model.
our fixed to variable rate in the midstream.
If you're gonna do that, you have to have a cost of service for every single year. And
Yeah.
you could model it. But because your costs shift,
Yeah,
each
yeah.
year, that's usually why they select, okay, we're gonna do a rate year of 2024, let's say, and we're gonna do our whole entire cost of service based off of that. And then each year thereafter, you're just keeping that proportionate amounts the same. You
But
can't, you
Is it
can't,
cost of service and another 218 notice each time, or just a new cost of service? if
I
you stay within the.
I would say if you stay within the numerical, then
yeah.
you can always
Okay.
go up to that noticed amount.
Yeah,
and
we
You can
would-
always do
so-
something different.
So if we're looking at 8%, it does, I
long
can
as-
do a 60-40 or a 40-60.
As long as it's the same
Right.
number
Number.
and we have a cost of
And we
service
do a new
study to
study.
justify it. I don't know. Is this where we
Good
look
thing,
at
you want me to,
Alfred?
do you want to weigh in?
Yeah,
Legal counsel?
Okay, so I'm gonna make to me, the statement is, I tend to agree with the 37 to 42. I would like to see our fixed cost moved over and stabilized into an area where they should be as opposed to where they are now. In other words, the recommended changes to the fixed cost. And the reason that I'm saying that, I don't think we're going to see a lot of CIP funds in the next 5 to 6 years. I mean, because that's what it takes to get something up and rolling.
Yeah.
And these projects are not up and rolling.
And Pam, I don't disagree with you, but my question is relative to what the law says. How are we allowed to proportion those allocations? And if we're stuck on a 5-year plan, we can always go back, I guess, with a new 218, in 3 years, if things go that direction instead of this direction.
Some agencies choose to do less than 5 years. I don't necessarily recommend it. I think you're just
No.
incurring more costs when you do that.
We've done that before. We want to stick
Not
with
my
5 years, but
recommendation.
I want to explore the flexibility legally of
And
how
that's
we
good. Yeah.
allocate those to
I
smooth those
agree with
bumps
you.
out.
Yeah,
Well, I think
I
that,
agree. With
we need to start moving forward here, and between now and the next year, Alfred can find us a path.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we got one.
I mean, the worst
But if we
case,
stay at the underneath the total revenue
Yeah.
limit,
if we look at an extreme worst case scenario, which is detachment's not approved for whatever reason, either LAFCO bails on it or the voters say, no way. We're looking at it, even though it's a pass through, a 14% increase coming out of the water authority. And at 14%, even out of the water authority, I think a lot of our growers are going to end up bailing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm on your page.
Okay. And that puts us in a really bad
Right.
situation.
Yeah, and
I
in that
don't
case, we
understand
should
why
be
we
at
can't look at
42.
this annually. Why do we have to do this 5-year deal?
The cost. of-
Because of the cost.
Volatility here is so great and everything.
Well, I think
mean,
that-
the egg guys, the avocado growers are now looking at Mexico having more imported in
Yeah.
here. So they've got the high water costs.
You kidding me? McDonald buys half
And
of
they're
his
getting
profit.
flooded.
there's a,
Your cost of doing a 218 proposal every
Well,
year.
how much?
It doesn't-
It-
it
it's-
doesn't-
it- I'm sorry,
I
it's,
mean, you can't do another 218 midstream, like we're less than 5 years.
Yeah.
Well, and so, because things change, the inflation changed like that, so you
Right.
might come in later. I think what you do is you do this plan. If everything's going to plan, then you don't need to do them. If something changes, there's some other thing that happens, you go,
Yeah.
wow, we need to go back out because now we're gonna have to raise rates more than we thought. And so it's only if you want to raise rates more than you forecast. And so you can always do it more often.
Yeah.
We suggest hoping for the best, but the plan for the worst, if things go south or it's high inflation or something happens, or demands go way down for whatever reason, then we do have to do another study because this was Kathleen Hedberg's comment,
Yeah.
because they don't pass through water authority stuff. There was this externality that's going to cause them to have to do another 218 notice. And so you can certainly do it. The recommendation from us is say, hey, maybe you get lucky and over 5 years, everything will happen just like we forecast. I doubt it, but
Or
maybe you'll
better.
get lucky
Or better.
or better. It could be better. Maybe,
Better.
maybe the hockey stick will appear.
Well, we kind of got lucky in the last go round. I mean, between 2013 and 2020.
Lucky.
Kind
you know.
of, well, not, it wasn't really bad. I mean, we haven't raised our rates a bunch.
I don't know. There's been a lot of rate increases and people aren't happy about them. But as you saw, the majority of the rate increases come from externalities. But if the board chooses to want to do this every year, staff will dutifully do it every year.
No, I don't
And
want.
so that's your call. Doesn't preclude you from doing it more often.
We can
Well, I'm
still
just
do it
saying,
every
'cause
year.
there's so much volatility.
We can still
Yeah.
do it
You've got
every
the
year.
LAPCO decision coming through.
Right.
I mean, I just sit here and go, oh my gosh, how can you make a 5-year
We-
plan?
we-
when
we
all this
can-
Stuff is.
Let me finish. We can still do it every year, but we want to try not to because it saves a lot of costs.
And
Saves a lot of staff time. And historically, when they're they did 1 year, for example, with wastewater and there was employee turnover. We went 5 years without a rate increase. So to
I
have
think
a
that
plan
there's
in
also-
place,
So
it doesn't hurt
You just have a
anything.
plan and then modify your
Exactly.
plan.
Yeah.
if-
And I-
If you need to.
Try to work your
So
plan.
There also
that's why I
sometimes,
like a lot of flexibility
Prop
in that
218
plan to try to adjust for bumps.
yeah, the Prop 218 process also increases public animosity sometimes through the whole
Totally.
notifying thing. And there are certain agencies, not ours, of course, that when you get into an election year, those things get even harder to do because it doesn't,
Because
nobody wants to have to be out there and have rile up the voters before an election.
Yeah.
So,
So it does,
So-
it does
Fallbrook
eat up some of
Plus
your
two
goodwill.
eighteen thing ended up with like
Oh
100
my
people in the
gosh.
hall and 200 people outside.
It was
yeah,
all over.
the one
Euclid.
before last, yeah,
Yeah,
this
well-
last one went through smoother. They on the wastewater side, they have to do 50%. They got to like 35% people protesting that, right? Well, I mean, well, you saw it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
But there was somebody outside Albertsons handing out flyers.
Okay, so I heard you say for the underlying 40%. I heard you say 38
The
to
42.
42. What do you have to say, Patty?
I'm lower.
Well, you got to pick a number.
You're
I
at
thought-
37
okay.
now. You're talking about going lower.
Lower the 30% fixed. Okay.
Okay, well,
I'm okay with the 38 to 42.
I'm kind of a believer in plan for the worst, hope for the best.
Me too.
I think we need to bite the bullet because you're better prepared, you can always reduce.
Yep.
In the succeeding years.
Tough to go up.
I
easy to go
think-
down.
I think we need to be at 42. With regard to the percent increase, I think we should be better than inflation. Okay. But I don't know that 8% is the right number. I think it's easier to justify, hey, inflation rate was 7.4. Okay, and we're at 7.6 because we're trying to
Stay even.
stay ahead of it and have some funding
Mhm.
in order to build the reserves, which apparently aren't there, then that's the approach we need to take. So the one other thing I was going to
If we get
ask,
development money,
Yeah.
then it all gets. a lot easier.
yeah, the one other thing I was going to ask after, Hayden says this thing, I want to hear thoughts from Flint and what he thinks. Because he's deep into this stuff
Both the
and
engineering and the.
yeah,
finance.
engineering and finance. And I think we ought to hear from him on, what
I
his
agree,
thoughts
Meg.
are.
I agree.
But that's where I am.
Thank you. Yeah, the messaging that we've gotten from the board since I started 5 years ago was to move more of our rate recovery onto the fixed.
Mhm.
And so we've been hovering at 38%. So now we're trying to move that. We're going to do whatever staff or whatever the board directs us to do. So I do think that doing it incrementally is important because it's going to be a disaster when all these ag customers go out of business and then we have to do a significant allocation of those costs to the single family. So, I mean, I'm hoping you guys do 42%, but I know it's a hard messaging to get out there.
That's why we hired that new marketing person.
Mhm.
Give
know,
her,
and
give her a real challenge the
It-
day
it's
one. She
customer
gets.
service and myself that gets,
Yeah.
these calls. I know sometimes they get up to the director level, but we take a lot of this, the brunt of this
Yeah.
too. So
Yeah.
it's not easy for us either.
Yeah.
Yes, I get picked on regularly.
Hey, if we don't go, it's gonna
Oh.
get ugly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So we better have eaten a bite of the elephant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I hear you, Meg. That's,
Yeah,
you know,
and if you push this down the road, that's going to be really hard on staff here that's here at that time.
Yeah.
and we don't want to lose staff either. I mean, think about the infrastructure, the people that the team Tom has put together.
I can
and-
hear Hayden's brain inverting and rotating right now. As I don't think that any decision the board should be made is on the convenience or
No.
or problems with staff. We get paid to come here and part of it's paid to take. calls.
No, but
Yeah.
So I don't want to have that be an overriding consideration, or really any consideration. Staff does what the board directs them to do. We're just laying out what we believe is what the financial future looks like. And even some of it might be too rosy, because I think there's plenty of scenarios and we'll model them what looks like otherwise. And that makes this 42, the question between 37 and 42 moot. You're talking should be going to 37 to 50
yeah,
in those
Absolutely.
situations.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so
I agree with Tom wholeheartedly. I'm just saying that our staff is empathetic to what the decision you have to make here.
I get that. Thank you. We have a great crew here, so that's not the issue. But
Well, we're not-
I'm leaning towards what Meg is saying, because that's the reality.
I think what we're trying to do is to involve the board early and often in our committees and as deep a level, because a lot of boards never see this. You don't ever see this. Staff comes to you with a few big choices, and this is your big choices to pick from, 1, 2, or 3. But we're trying to have a little more wide-ranging discussion, not just on this one, but on, hey, what does it look like in the future and where does this go? But I thought you wanted Clint to weigh in. I see him eagerly
Come
anticipating.
on, Clint.
this.
Then the CPA.
Okay, first of all, I just want to say that I think that the staff work that has been done on this is really outstanding. I look back 5 years and think about what this conversation, we couldn't have this conversation 5 years ago. Just period, end of conversation. Couldn't do it. And yes, we have sat through this in budget and finance a couple of times now, and I too am on the plan for the worst and hope for the best scenario, because, and frankly, the politics of it work well. This is not an election year. I think this is the year to go ahead and bite a bullet and sink your teeth in and get a substantial rate increase in place that gives you the flexibility to do something different in the future and minimize what the longer term hit is going to be by taking the near term. And the worst thing that could happen, though, would be to take a substantial rate increase in the near term and have lots of users, big users, fall off, and it just opens the door to bigger rate increases in the future. But some things we just cannot control. And I don't know how you predict that or control that. I really do not. So I share your dilemma, and I share your concern. And I think the most important thing is to preserve your flexibility for the out years. That's the most important thing. So I too would be looking at the 42 or maybe even,
45.
If-
Now, what about the percent increase?
I'm a little more on the fence about the percent increase. I think I have a bias, and that bias is that I do not believe under any circumstances that we should rein in the horses now that we finally know how to implement a capital improvement program. Now is not the time to rein in the horses. We need to let that hound hunt. And that means that I would go for a higher percentage increase to make sure we are getting capital dollars in the door that we can turn around and go out and spend, because ultimately replacing and upgrading our infrastructure is going to save the ratepayers money on the operating side, because we're not going to be constantly responding to the crisis of the moment.
Yeah.
And so once again, I think we need to
100,000.
eat it now. We need to eat the big bone now and look at what that gives us down the road.
Do you have a number in mind?
No, I really don't. I do not have a number in mind, but I would say that that the staff are in a position to take that guidance and come back to us with a good number that makes sure that we preserve. And I don't know, let's say we should always be doing a minimum of $3 million a year in capital improvement. Now that we know they can spend 6, 7, 8. I'm thinking, look bigger. I mean, you have the opportunity for a little debt financing on a package of programs, but look bigger because that infrastructure is not getting any better.
We played a lot of catch up over the last
Yes, we have.
years.
Did-
I think it's
Haven't
that.
haven't we done a study in the past? I'm trying to recall, my memory's very foggy, but if we looked at irrespective of inflation and increase in operation costs and things like that, to fund capital improvement at a $1 million, $2 million, $3 million a year level, have we looked at what rate increases would be associated with that?
Well, the
You
model
follow what
will,
I'm saying?
will
The
do that if,
model did.
yeah.
It did have it.
And we
I
can
missed
adjust-
that.
Yeah, we
Okay.
go out 10 years when we look
Yeah.
at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
missed it in the
We
presentation.
don't put 10 years in there.
But
I wasn't talking about 10 years. I was talking about,
In the 5.
Right.
There were capital improvements in the 5.
The capital plan was, I'm just gonna give you a rough estimate. It was between 5 million and maybe 7 million. And then the out
a
years,
year or?
a year,
total?
each
Yeah,
year.
A year, okay,
That was 33 million for the 5 years.
okay.
And then in the out
And
years.
That
we
was
do-
at 8%.
And that was at 8%. And we do, and again, assuming that the water usage stays constant at what we're assuming or projecting it's going to be for 2023, which was, we had almost all actuals with just a few months of projecting. And we based that off of
Okay.
2020, okay? So
Sorry, I didn't
no, you're fine.
observe that in your presentation.
no, it's fine, it's good. And then in the out years, we're actually assuming about 6.2 million annual spend. So it's in the model,
Okay,
okay?
but I just heard Flint said he wanted more.
Can't have it, Flint, not this year.
Well, I mean, that's the other thing where should development, the Bonzalooks, all the other ones that are sitting around here talking about it, that's going to bring in capital infusion.
Well, and the reason for my question is, okay, we're looking at, you said 6 million a year at
Correct.
8%. If we went to 9%, what would that give us in terms of extra capital improvement? You bite the bullet now,
Mhm.
so to speak, and
And
be
then
able to replace this infrastructure.
Yeah, the
that-
earlier you implement the larger rate increase, it has benefits that go through the model in a surprising way. 1% more in the current year, 5 years out makes a big difference.
So let me ask this question, Tom, with all of the capital improvements we've done, do you have any idea how much money that has saved us with Robert not having to go out with trucks and pick up sewage and
Well, it's hard-
divert water and
it's hard to put any particular number on it. The metric we have been tracking, trying to look at break rates, and
Okay.
break rates have come down a small amount, but they're still out there. And one of the things, when you remember the condition assessment program is working on cathodic protection, which we got our first project in now, the second one's in design, going to get ready to construction, and then expand that program to protect some of the older steel pipe. Well, we've been adding anodes. Well, actually, I should say more. I don't know how many anodes have you dropped over the last couple of years.
Everything on main break.
So every time we're out there, we open up main break, we drop an anode on there that should arrest further corrosion on it.
and how many pipes have we lined? I know we did a huge amount of
Well, about
pipelining.
One major
Oh.
pipe break a month, right?
Yeah, the North River Road line, we did one under the freeway.
Yeah.
We did some up in Morrow Hills.
Right, North River Road.
Yeah.
So that was the,
That's it.
Yeah, this is Chad. For CIPP, we've done 3 sections of our sewer mains.
so it's hard to put an exact number on it, but we just track on break rates and whatnot. But if you do nothing, it just gets worse.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And it was
So-
pretty bad when you started.
Well, I mean, it's not that it's been, just do that. Some of it's operational control, but a lot of it has to do with, you got a rusty pipe. If you can keep it from rusting more, that's
You
good.
stabilize.
But that's
Yeah.
kind of a temporary solution.
Yeah.
Because those sacrificial anodes erode over a pace of a
Right.
decade or so.
Right.
So it's just a matter of systematically, that's kind of a Band-Aid while we work on fixing the rest of the bullet wound.
Got it.
If our state government would do anything, if they would send us money, not in the form of loans, but actually in grants to do actual pipeline replacements rather than just recycling projects and crap like that, out of these billions of dollars they got, none of it ends up.
Could we
hurting things
declare
we
all
got.
our main pipeline lead pipeline?
Thankfully, we don't have any of that. There's
no lead pipeline in Rainbow.
What?
Just want to clarify one thing, and that is, because I was just talking to Andrea. The fact that $6-7 million is built into the 8% number over time, over the 4 or 5 year period. I guess the reason why I have a little, it's not a reservation, but I'm going to continue to advocate is that cost of money is escalated by 7.5% every year, which means that we are buying less stuff. Okay, we're spending more money, but we get less stuff.
proper.
So,
Which is why we had that loan.
so you have to escalate your
Cost of goods.
expense higher than your escalation for cost of funds. That's all I'm saying.
That makes
Yeah.
sense.
Well, that's why we did that debt. Because
Well, we took
That money
advantage of the
was
markets
cheaper.
where it was.
Yeah,
And it
well,
was
we took
cheap
advan-
Because it went up, what, 6%? the next year,
exactly,
like that.
but I mean, it was really a good move on the board's. part.
So I guess at this point, Andrea, I think we've got general direction. Obviously, there's no vote needed, but consensus building here, and then we'll put it together and bring it back next month.
Okay,
At the next month, it will be for the board to open the hearing. It won't be the vote where you vote on the rates. That'll happen in June. June, because it's
Mhm.
45 day, right? Minimum 45 day 218 notice. But it will have what you're gonna have at that meeting. We're gonna come with the proposal and you say, hey, we need to tweak it here or there, then that's gonna be it. Cause then we gotta print it up. If we make those tweaks, print them up, get them in the mail, get them out to the public so that we hold a hearing date in June where we vote on the rates and the budget and everything at the same time.
okay.
I just wanted to make another comment. I don't mean to sound like super frugal or unrealistic, but in my district, there's a bunch of single family homes with young couples. And when I moved here 3.5 years ago, I was in shock at the water rates, which is one of the reasons I wanted to run for this. And to have these young people moving in now and having their water rates go way higher is just scary to me. I think it's scary to them. And that's one of the reasons I'm thinking, it's like, I prefer filet mignon to a hamburger. But if there's some middle ground there, maybe that would be a good place to go. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Well, it's hard everywhere around the county, and that was expressed by a lot of the board members of the Water Authority, because like I said, their 40%, that's going to hit these people a lot more. We pass that through than our percent, because you're talking, if it's an 8% revenue requirement, that's on our side of it, which is only the 35% of the bill, not the 65 that's the Water Authority or whatever the number was. And so, yeah, it's tough. And that's why what we're trying to do with detachment is to take that bigger chunk of their bill and cut that way back. But it is hard. It's always the thing that water in our rural areas tends to be much more expensive. And it's unusual to have these high density areas within a rural area, which makes it tricky. But we can't differentiate under 218 those costs that way, because some of the ideas I had that mathematically might work for both ends don't work on a cost of service basis to where you would be immune from being sued and lose, and then the bad things that happen there. So if we had more rate flexibility under the law, it might be easier to carve things out so that we could make something that everyone might agree is more equitable, but our hands are tied in certain ways that we can only flip certain levers. And as you saw in the model, you flip one lever one way, it just makes a very distortive effect. And Flint and Tracy and I spent hours and hours over the last couple of years trying to figure out a way that could apportion these costs in a different way that didn't create just these crazy outlier problems. It's a difficult situation.
Yeah.
The worst thing can happen is that we lose all our ag customers, and then it's just bad news all around.
Yeah.
That's bad news all around. Yeah.
Okay.
Chair
Right.
Hamilton. Oh, are we done on that one?
I'm assuming we're done with that one. Do we want to take a short break?
Yeah, and I was talking to Chad, the other two presentations aren't time sensitive, but
Okay.
considering the time that we might could defer those to next month, unless somebody has a real desire to do it, but seeing as it's almost 4 o'clock already and
yeah.
we have a few more business items to get to. I was thinking if it's okay with the board, we could defer those to next month unless,
Sounds like a good idea.
No problem.
I mean, this
Yeah.
discussion we just had right now was
Was
super
important.
robust and super helpful. and
Very
super healthy.
important.
I think it's good for the board and everybody and the public, whoever's here,
Okay.
to have, seen it.
Yeah.
These aren't conversations where we want to show up on rate hearing day and have, we want
Yeah,
to work through this.
It's hard.
Okay.
So what other do we need to cover before? we
Well, I think a
finish?
bio break, I think is what the chair was recommending.
I mean, we've gone almost 4 hours.
Yeah.
3 hours, excuse me.
Don't tell OSHA that.
Is it 5 o'clock yet? I'd like a glass of wine.
Well, if you get the next couple items
So,
done fast, you might make that. happen.
We'll take a 8-minute break and resume at 4:05. No, 8-minute break and
That would be
resume at 4 o'clock. Sorry.
New
Didn't have
math.
my calculator. On mute. Call to order. For the sake of time, we're going to defer items number 20 and 21 on the agenda and move on to 23. Notice of completion and acceptance of infrastructure for Montserrat Winery by Gerd Valley Inc. Division 3.
Chad, are you going to take this one?
Yes, sir. Everybody can hear me okay?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, thank you all so much. Yes, so item 23 before you, this would normally be on the board's consent calendar. However, there were no other consent calendar items, so it's a voting measure. But the title, Notice of Completion and Acceptance of the Infrastructure for the Montserrat Winery by Gerd Valley Incorporated. Again, in Division 3. A little bit of background on this project. The board is being asked to accept the Montserrat Winery project. All construction for both sewer and water facilities, which were required because this used to be a golf course and now it's a winery with several APNs on it. So we converted many of the water services and water meters and then all of the sewer infrastructure. The project is 100% complete. It was built per the district's standard specifications and approved plans. And the staff is recommending that the board accept option 1. Before any questions or comments that the board may have, I do want to give a huge shout out to Amanda Constant and Delia Rubio on this one. When this was all being worked out way back when, they spent countless hours working with myself and the developer to try and divide all of these different APNs and make sure that all the cap fees and sewer EDUs, everything was going to work correctly. And so I just wanted to give that huge shout out to the staff that helped support this process, get it to the notice of completion that we have here today. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
So the infrastructure was complete, but the buildings aren't complete. Is that correct?
That is correct, Director Moss.
Our infrastructure.
Yeah,
We can.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm asking. Our
Yes,
infrastructure is complete, even though the buildings are not.
the developer is still working with the County of San Diego and the fire department for those buildings. But as far as water meters, everything's set. In the sewer service agreement that we've entered into with this developer, there are caveats and stipulations that should processes on-site change or buildings expand beyond what is currently proposed, that there would be a reopener on that sewer service agreement. In fact, Robert, I don't want to put you on the spot, but it was a month or 2 months ago, our wastewater supervisor actually went out to the site and conducted an industrial wastewater permit.
He's got a sick kid at home.
I have, and she's found the noisiest item here, so I apologize.
It's okay. We didn't hear it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, having looked at it and followed it, I'm in favor of option 1. I move we accept option 1 on the Montserrat Winery infrastructure.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Moved by Director Moss, option 1, seconded by Director Gasca. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions?
Mr. Chairman, I'd be remiss as the president of the Bonsall Rotary not to mention that the Montserrat Winery will be the location for our 26th annual Wine, Brews and Blues Festival on May 6th. It's a fantastic venue, a great addition to our community, and you can find tickets at bonsallrotary.com.
Yeah.
So
I've already got my.
This is a
tickets.
a tent structure?
we
Since
will
there are no
have,
buildings?
it's not in one of the buildings. We're going to be on one of the, he has several different venue areas. There will be a tent where the stuff of is mainly outside
Cool.
with 2 different live bands, food, wine, beer, and great fun.
When was that? Again?
May 6th.
May 6th.
May
What time
6th.
does it start, Tom?
I'm trying, I know when I got to be there, but I believe it's 4 to 8.
Then when we have a conference?
Are you going to help me park again?
It's on a Saturday.
It's on a Saturday.
I think our conference starts the following.
It does on the 9th, I think Director
Oh.
Mack is going on the 7th and Director Gasser as well. I think the day before that.
Okay.
Yeah, I may have to change. I'll talk to you about it afterwards. My wife's getting both her knees operated on
Oh, boy. Yeah.
on the 5th, so.
Oh, dear.
I probably won't be going.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll talk.
Item number 24, discussion and possible action to approve a change order to the engineering and development plan check services, professional services agreement in the amount of $200,000 and extend the contract through December 31st, 2024.
Chad, if you like, I can give a preamble here since Flint's in the room and you're not here and you won't be able to see his facial expressions.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate that.
So, we handle, when Michael Powers left and went to Valley Center, we needed someone to handle our plan checking for developments. So developer comes in, they got a set of drawings. Michael used to do that. He didn't. So we contracted with Ardura to handle it. They have a really skilled person who's been doing this for a long time and has been doing a great job for us. 100% of their costs, when we send them a set of drawings and they send us a bill, the developer pays that bill. And so what the staff is looking at right now is with the uncertainty on the development scenario, we don't know how much of this work's going to come in. And with, the economic conditions we're in, we proposed that rather than replacing the position, which, our development activity was going really hot and heavy for a while here with D.R. Horton and all that sort of stuff. We don't see that in the near future. It might come in, but kind of the plan for the worst, hope for the best. Staff's recommendation was to just continue this through this next year. It has a not to exceed amount, but again, those costs are 100% paid for by the developers. Because if we brought in another full-time employee, then there's certain overhead costs and whatnot that fall on the district that we had to cover. It's hard to bill out 100% of their time. And I understand completely where Chair Nelson's comments were that yes, but we do want to have an in-house engineer position for the prosecution of not just this, but other CIP projects. And I think those thoughts are well-founded. And I believe, and I won't speak for him, he'll tell you exactly what his thoughts are. And I wasn't at that meeting. That was the day I had the stuff in my eyes. So I was in the hospital with tubes in my eyes.
Yeah.
Now I got pictures to prove.
It took about 5 bottles of wine to cure it, right?
It may not work, but it fails better than most things. And so there's different of opinion on that, and that they thought that, yeah, it's probably better just to bring it in-house just to have capacity, and I'll let him speak on his own on that. And so the committee didn't vote to recommend its approval, we had an internal meeting in staff, and that we decided that we were going to, and it doesn't, like he said, it's a rare occasion that the committee and the staff end up on different sides of the same coin. But we thought at this particular moment in time, until we have more certainty on A, CIP funding, and B, the development environment, that it was more prudent to not commit to another full-time employee at this time, go through a more extended staffing analysis process and forecasting, and then bring that person on in the future as we believe it would be more warranted at that time. But with that said, I don't know, Flint, I don't know if I characterized your position accurately at all. I wasn't there to hear it. So
Yes, please.
Actually, Tom, I'm sorely wounded by the way you characterized my position there.
all right. Sorry, I don't know. I wasn't here.
No,
I was otherwise.
it is true that that it's an honest disagreement over or different set of views on how to proceed. My perspective on this is based on experience that I had in a similar type of organization where we did this kind of work. And first of all, I come from a place where I believe that instead of investing in a consultant's future, we should be investing in our future. We know we're going to need this engineering position filled. My recommendation was, and I was surprised that actually the committee, there were other members that signed on. There was one member that did not, but was that let's go out and get a young one. Let's get an EIT or a junior engineer.
HR just cringed.
Right. No, a young one. Let's get a young person who's looking to make a start in career, full of energy, enthusiasm. To bring them in, get them started on doing a little plan checking. It does say twice in here, the district has received an influx of development and customer project submittals and easement documents. And it said again, due to the increase in plan check and easement. So we clearly have some volume of work, which will be paid for by some outside funding source, these people that are submitting the plans. So there's only a small incremental difference between what it costs to do that work and what it would cost to have the employee. And we had salary savings from not filling the position since September. We could bring in a junior engineer or an EIT, have them work on plan checking, and also rotate them a little bit through the capital projects into Robert's department, let them go out on some calls. And, there's force account available in the capital program so that we are building during a little bit of a lull, we are building the capability of this person to know what we're about, what our district is, because we are going to ultimately need an engineer, maybe two, in that department. And so I just believe rather than sinking it into a sinkhole of a consultant firm where we get some service, but we don't get any long-term development, why don't we invest in ourselves? So that was, I do not presume that I have sat there and penciled and papered every dollar to figure out exactly what it is. But I think that there is a value on developing ourselves and developing our staff. So I propose we invest in our staff.
And I have done the numbers on the comparison. If we were to hire another full-time engineer, I know the historical ratio of the full-time engineer, 59% of their time was charged to the operating budget, which is a rate impact. And with the changes we made by adding the administrative analyst this year, we expected that to go down to about 52%. But even that, the options that we would have for hiring about somewhere between 76,000 and 102,000 a year would be the portion that would hit our operating budget that would have a direct impact on customer rates. And we're already having very sensitive rate conversations right now. And because this contract does 100% get passed through to the developer's costs, it doesn't have any impact on the other customers or our operating costs. 28% is what was actually being charged to developers with the engineer that we had in-house. And then 13% is what he was charging to capital improvement projects. And we expected that to go up closer to 20% once we had the added administrative.
Less than half his time.
But it's still less than half his time. The total cost to hire, that's the very low end, the very most entry level, the bottom of the lowest pay grade that we would have available to hire into would be a total district cost of 137,000 a year. And because we're in an extremely competitive recruitment market at the moment, I would say that it would be possible we might have to hire in at the second pay grade up. And the top end of that, the total district costs, including all retirements and benefits, would be $218,000. So the difference is
The costs are about the same.
the costs are about the same. The difference is who pays for it.
Well,
Because
I'm sorry, Carlene,
this
to
would-
clarify, the costs are not the same. That's per year. This is up to 200,000 for the course of two years.
That was my next question is Tom just characterized it as a 1-year contract and it's 21 months.
Yeah, you're right. It's more than one. It's through the end of
2024.
24.
Right. So in that case,
But we might choose next budget cycle to do a different thing. Say,
Absolutely.
we come across some more capital money and the capital program has more stuff to do, then we would. Yeah, I think Flint's right. Developing and bringing someone up would be awesome. But we're also a small organization that, we run pretty lean. We don't have a lot of developmental people here. We have a lot of people who are, come in and hit the ground running. So if the board wants to do that, we're happy as clams to do it. But when we look at from a business perspective, and I think that was
Why did you choose a 21-month period instead of a 12-month period?
I'd have to defer to Chad on that.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So I think kind of to go back to the thing that Tom just said, we all agree with the engineering and operations committee and their assessment. We just don't agree that the timing is right now. So the reason that we've elected for a 2-year contract with this firm is let's see what happens the rest of this calendar year. And should things start to pick up, this is flexibility. This can be terminated for convenience at any time we want it to. We can go out and start recruiting then if we want to bring it in-house earlier, or if the economy stays the way it is and we keep stalling with projects like Campus Park West, Bonzel Oaks, Ocean Breeze, all of these other developments, and there is less than 50% of the time being done, then we can continue. And then the thought was between myself, HR, finance, and the general manager was maybe in about 18 months, so midway through this, start recruiting, again, assuming that that economy is picking back up. And then we have some nice overlap between the consultant, myself, and our new hire.
Are the fees fixed for the full period of the contract, or can they escalate based on inflation?
I believe the fees are a flat, we are charged per sheet, so we're not even charged per hour. And I believe that that is consistent throughout the duration of the contract.
That was what was explained here, but I'm asking if there's any clause for escalation on those charges.
None that we would accept. And
Yeah.
if they wanted to jack the price, then we would say, all right, we have a different alternative here.
So the
Correct.
recourse is if you went with a 12 month cycle, you could be faced with higher charges to extend it to the next year.
Correct.
Potentially, if anytime you change a contract,
Correct.
that's when.
You're
Yeah.
subject to those.
I'm actually not in favor of hiring anybody right now. Because if we are hiring someone at the lower end of the scale, it may not be what we want. Why don't we sit tight for a little while and use the contract and determine where we're going? Because right now there are so many unknowns. I'm not in favor of adding weight to the payroll at this point.
I don't think you get a disagreement there. The question was the term of the contract was what I was interested in and what exposure we might have in terms of either termination or escalation.
That solely resides at the sole discretion of the district. We have consultants all the time. Hey, we brought on this new person, or because of inflation or whatever the case is, we'd like to up our rates. And I give major credit to Delia and Colette. They scrutinize those, come back with everything, and we do not have to approve them.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Yeah. So I guess the concern I'd have is, we lost Michael, and right now it's a spiral environment where guys, they're being sought, and they're back in the 70s. That's what people did. They spiraled to different companies, different agencies. That's how they got their promotions. That's how they got their money, their salary raised. And I think we're in that kind of environment right now. And my concern would be that we bring somebody in junior, they get a year,
Yeah.
20 months.
We
in-
train them and then
we
they go.
train them and they go. Okay.
Yeah.
And the reality is, because we had the same issue up in Running Springs, and we had to find other ways of keeping the people in place. Okay. And so, we had flex time before there was flex time, and we had other incentives like that that people wanted to be there because of those features that they couldn't find at other agencies. And I think, we're probably better to contract out. We can cut it off whenever we need to. If things dry up, we're not paying anything. We don't have that overhead, that additional overhead, and yet if things do turn around in a year or two, we can,
I think you bring
hit
up
the accelerator.
excellent points. And I would also point out that the engineer is a single incumbent position. And when you have single incumbent positions, it's often not a good idea to hire at the early end of a career because they don't have a mentor in-house to learn from.
Yeah.
And so for a lot of our single incumbent positions, we do end up hiring people with
Senior.
robust experience from somewhere else so that they
We
have
steal their junior.
competency. Right. We're the one coaching for those other agencies that have developed someone for a few years. And so.
Any other discussion? Is there a motion?
What would the option, what is option 1 and 2? Excuse me.
Well, Clint's comments about hiring somebody or the way it's written. And
Yeah,
I like-
option
I
2
like
is provide
your
other
idea.
direction to staff.
Yeah, option
one
2 is
to-
provide other direction. Option 1 is to approve the
Like,
contract.
we didn't come
Okay,
with a proposal
it.
to hire
Thank you.
someone because we didn't,
Yeah.
it was necessary to go through that thing. We can,
Yeah.
if you want.
No. So option
just
1
making
is
sure.
the contract.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve option 1.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, option 1 has been moved by Director Gaska, seconded by Director Moss. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Done. Item number 26, consider committee member appointment on March 22nd, 2023. The Communications and Customer Service Committee members approved a motion recommending the board approve appointment of Bill Shute to continue to serve as member of the committee.
So we're just looking for, if you'd like Bill to serve, give us a motion for option one.
I move that we accept option one.
I'll second it.
Moved by Director Hamilton, option one, seconded by Director Moss. All those in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Opposed? Unanimous vote. Number 27, appointment to Bill Stewart to the Budget and Finance Committee as a public member. Recommended by the Budget and Finance Committee on the March 14th meeting. Any discussion? Is there?
This is just changing Bill Stewart from a representative of the board on the committee to a member of the public.
Okay.
Make a motion to take option one, appointing Bill as a member of the public.
Second. Moved by option one, option one moved by Director Gasca and seconded by Director Hamilton. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Yeah, we need all the members we can get because we didn't make a quorum one month
Yeah.
this year already.
Board members request for authorization to attend upcoming meetings and conferences. Any requests?
No.
Board information items, receive and file. All this stuff. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I have something to add. I gave the Budget and Finance Committee a quick update on the banking crisis that we were going through that week, with Silicon Valley Bank closing and a lot of the smaller banks having issues.
We had money there?
No, we did not. Thank goodness. We're pretty evenly balanced to help mitigate against interest rate risk and maintain liquidity. But we did have quite a bit of funds that we were holding from the wholesale water efficiency loan. What I did is I opened a California class account, which is really similar to LAIF. It's for government agencies, and they've had a return of almost 5%, which is much better than LAIF. And I split the funds between that and LAIF just to not have them all in one bank. We're with Union Bank, who has been bought out by US Bank. So we're with a really stable, large bank. I'm not worried there, but I still like to make sure that we're diversified. Last fall, we did own some Credit Suisse, but we sold it at a loss, which was painful for me. You only hold AAA and AA rated investments. That one I think was AA, but they weren't looking good. I'm sure you saw them in the news. They went completely south. So
yeah.
although we took a loss last fall, but fortunately we did a small, I don't like taking any losses. It would have been a lot worse. So I just want to let you guys know that, I'm watching that and we're diversified and we've got some good options.
Cool.
Good job. Thank
Yeah,
you.
Tracy sniffed it out several months ahead of everybody else.
Yeah.
Really? Yeah. Robert, you have any comments?
Robert's going to tell us about the fun with rainfall. Well, Alfred's got to be at Rincon at 5 o'clock.
4.2 minutes.
To be
Mr.
as fast
Chairman,
as I was.
Alfred's got to be down at Rincon at 5 o'clock, so he might step out, I
Okay.
imagine. Because they got a board meeting. Normally we're done.
Yeah.
Sorry, I gotta quit all these other ones that are up.
Yeah.
So Alfred and I've talked about Rincon. He says we're his priority.
Because he's sitting here and we could park somebody behind his car back out there.
And Clint verified that too when I
Uh-huh.
saw him at CS.
That's where Clint went to
Yeah.
park his car behind Alfred.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
So, so just to give you a quick update with the atmospheric rivers, what we've estimated in the county and the numbers I've
Oh
heard
my
is
God, that's North River Road.
that's that's North River Road. So we're at about
It's more like North River Road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
we're at about 1 foot of water received this season so far in the county, probably a little bit more up in North County. When we receive this much rain, it's very interesting. Our wastewater folks get a lot of work handed their way. So just to quickly recap for everybody, the wastewater pipes generally flow. If you have let's say an 8-inch pipe that's about this big, there's probably this much wastewater in that pipe and they're gravity. Sometimes they have cracks in them. If you can remember the work we did up on North River Road where we saw pipe failures and cracks and water coming in there. that happens in the wastewater system. So when it rains, that as the groundwater level rises, that water creeps into the wastewater system. So now we're pumping and moving rainwater
Water
and
and
wastewater. And our system has limited capacity, obviously. So the first couple atmospheric rivers that hit us didn't really impact us because the ground wasn't saturated yet and we were okay. But the last 3 that hit us, particularly last week, really kicked our butts. So in combination with that, this all started last Tuesday night. We had a main break go down on Tuesday night on Palo Mesa Road. So we brought a crew out for that. But then starting Wednesday morning, we started putting guys on 12-hour shifts. So we bring a whole crew of people in for 12 hours, send them home, bring another crew in for 12 hours. This was the crux of our issue, which is lift station 2. Otherwise, it's located at Little Gopher and Old River. And you can see the amount of flood water and everything around that lift station and what's going on there. This is the last lift station in our system, and this is where we pump water from here to Oceanside. So we're also limited by how much we can pump down North River Road. Same, because we're trying to force as much water down North River Road, its pipe size limits us. All the wastewater coming in here starts to get to the point where it's going to overflow out of those open hatches right there, which are the wet wells. It's going to overflow and just start spilling everywhere. So we have to start taking steps to mitigate that. But I'll come back to that. These are manholes in Moosa Creek. Okay. These manholes, what you see right there, normally when it's normal, what you can see is about 4 feet of that manhole. So 4 feet down. The Thoroughbred project is going to take care of this hot mess. So when we get done with Thoroughbred, this is not going to be an issue. But this is one of the things that we gauge how bad we're going to get hit is when the creek gets to this level. It hasn't been to this level since 2019. We didn't spill over in the manholes, but this is how we got pretty close. We got pretty close.
Yeah.
There's also in these manholes, there's plastic, we call them rain pans. So it's a piece of plastic. You lift open the lid and looks like a dish pan, but it's plastic, and that keeps the rainwater from getting into the manholes. These are tanks that we brought into lift station 2 at Old River and Little Gopher. Each one of these tanks holds 21,000 gallons of liquid. So what we did is we set up one of our pumps to pump out of the wet wells because we're getting too much flow in there and pump it into these tanks. And then we have tanker trucks hook up to these tanks and draw that sewage out, and they transport it down to Stallion and North River Road. So to do that operation, you're looking at 5 to 6 people to do this operation. That doesn't count the truck drivers because they're contractors, right? So 5 to 6 people, whether it's raining or not.
12 hours a day.
And one night it was pouring rain on everybody that were out there. Just a far off picture, you can see the hoses and the pump in the background. That's actually our pump. And part of that pumping operation, we moved 671,000 gallons of water is what we actually moved since January of sewage. So by comparison, the Thoroughbred emergency storage facility, when we get done with Thoroughbred, we'll be able to hold about 350,000 gallons of sewage there. So it'll be our biggest storage facility.
Yeah, and that 600,000 was over multiple storms that, we got it moved, so the most we moved in one day, I think was 120,000.
Correct. So I'm hopping back and forth because we just threw these pictures up here and didn't want to go through a whole PowerPoint and all that. Another angle of Old River and Little Gopher, you can see the water kind of cascading over the driveway entrance. All that mud and water came down there. Our crews, along with county crews, worked to clear all the mud. It was about 5 inches thick in that intersection once the rain stopped. There's drains in that area. They get clogged up. It looks like a river just coming down Little Gopher. So we've pretty much got that sorted out and are ready for the next rain. This is a picture of our lower yard, and this was, I think, the day before, Carlene.
Yeah, that was the day before
Yeah.
the field trip was going to be here.
Day before. So
Explain what our rings with him.
so I emailed Carlene and I said, hey, I don't think we're going to be able to do that field trip. Plus, we still had folks dealing with moving sewage, but this is what our lower yard looked like. The complete lower yard was like that.
You could have done it in canoes.
Yeah. 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 This is Stallion and North River Road. So this is what it looks like when the tanker trucks are dropping their loads off. So they get in line, they stage on the side of the road. We have a couple people up there with traffic control. They pull up to the manhole. They open up the manhole, drop their hose in there and open up the valve and drop it all in there. We give Oceanside because we have to pay them to treat our sewage. So we give them all the information from these trucks. So how much sewage we transport, we notify them ahead of time, say, hey, we're going to be running trucks because this is actually city of Oceanside.
Yeah.
This is not our district. So we give them a heads up, give them the tickets, and then they add that on to the spreadsheet that we give them every year on how much flows that we did. This is what a tanker truck looks like. So the issue with the tanker trucks is it's first come, first serve for the entire county. So we call 3 or 4 companies and just to see who's available and how many we can get. Sometimes we get 1, sometimes we can get 3. It's a hodgepodge. Right now, they're all tasked out for City of San Diego. They've got a huge issue going on with one of their pumps, sewer lift stations. We're trying to get a truck for tomorrow and it was dicey. The guy was like wavering. Nobody else was available. They're all City of San Diego's using them right now. So that's all for the pictures, but just wanted to let everybody know kind of what we're up against when it rains and the way our sewer system is. Thoroughbred, we strongly believe the way that it's been designed with the extra storage, the upsizing of the 12-inch sewer line on 76 to 18, getting rid of the manholes down in Moosa Creek is really going to allow us to control the flows before they hit that last lift station. So we're not going to get hit with so much sewage that we have to do all these things to make it work. We can back it up and hold it at Thoroughbred a little bit longer. We even got to the point where we shut down all the lift stations that last week when it started raining hard. So we went through every lift station. You shut them all down that you can, like Horse Creek's a good example, and we hold. But the problem is we've got to release that eventually. Once we release that, you've got to release it a little bit at a time. So now that just takes all night long to do that process. So I wish we'd had Thoroughbred done already. It would have saved a lot of work and effort. So we've got a little bit of rain coming tomorrow, quarter, half inch. I don't think they're not even calling it atmospheric river. It's already starting to break up. There's rain in the forecast for next week. Maybe we've got 4 more weeks of this. I'm hoping mid-April we start coming out of it.
I'm done.
You know,
It is water.
the fire season's probably going to get pushed out. So we're probably not going to see fire season in July or June. We'll probably see it farther out because it's going to take time for everything to dry out.
Right.
And one last note, I'll make it really quick. We are getting a lot of calls from residents about leaks. So water coming off their neighbor's property, water in the street, and it's just, everything is just so saturated. We have to go out and investigate it because it could be a legitimate leak, but it just waters everywhere right now.
Have you seen the waterfall over by Deer Springs
Yes.
on the right-hand side?
Yes, at the lake over there. Yeah.
Well, not that lake, up further, just at the off-ramp.
Oh.
There's a waterfall on the side of the mountain.
Oh,
Never seen it before.
yeah. So we've been busy. We've been busy. Oh, and one last thing, we had the fire symposium on Saturday. Went really good. There was a full house. It was Fallbrook High School's library. There was 200 folks in there. Every seat was full. There was tables set up on the outside for all the partner agencies. We co-presented with FPUD. It went really good. Real positive feedback from that. I think they're going to do another one in about 2 years. Probably have to pick a bigger venue for that. But it gave residents the opportunity to hear what the agencies were doing and then go around and talk to those agencies individually if they had any questions or whatnot. So yeah, that went real well. Any questions?
Yeah, I guess would probably like to see a breakout of what the cost is. This is extra what our budget was, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess like to see a breakout, manpower, the, rental equipment.
Everything. That's a
Yeah.
great, thank you, Meg.
So as soon as we got a hankering what was going on, we actually created a project number for this that makes it easier
Oh, good.
for us to
Yeah.
track it and finance. Right now, our hard costs, meaning tanker trucks, rental equipment, we're 50, 60K range. We haven't figured out the personnel costs because we're just not done. We don't
Yeah,
think we're
right,
done yet.
Right,
Right.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I'm not asking for it right away. I think when the season's done. you know,
Right, right.
To see a full wrap of what that extra.
Either
That's a big hit.
either the April board meeting or for sure, the May board meeting, we should be out of the season.
Yeah.
That's a final number.
Better stop bringing it up, man.
And we also submitted for grants, or I guess it's grants through the county OES. They were asking for
really?
dollar totals, so
Yeah.
we may get lucky and
Oh, yeah.
get some
Okay.
reimbursement. So
Well, we're out here trying to prevent sewer spills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amelia, our grant writer, she's taking the lead on
Is-
that. and
You
helping
remember
us
we were
out.
talking about the wastewater stuff, about the lining and the pipes and things like
Yeah.
that. Those are some of those key areas that we need to deal with.
Right.
Those are on the
It
list.
was a good thing we had North River Road relined.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that reduced the amount we had. So it gave extra capacity in that line so that we can push water through it. Because if we didn't have that.
And no intrusion.
20,000 might have been 180,000.
Yeah, it would have been a lot worse, for sure.
Every little
Yeah.
bit helps.
Yep.
That's all I have.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Robert.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you very much.
List of suggested agenda items for the next regular board meeting.
We're gonna bring back the two items we deferred. We'll have Tracy and the opening the rate hearing.
Yeah, and Tom, we can talk with Tracy, because if it's another really long one, these, again, they're not time sensitive and I'll just keep updating them, but have that. And then we have the ongoing litigation for closed session at next month's meeting as well.
The TC construction
Correct.
craziness.
We'll have an update for the board.
We also had the Rainbow Public Facilities Corporation next month.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Anything
20
else?
and 21 will be added
Brought
to the
back.
next one.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else?
Nope.
Going, gone. We're adjourned.